Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
Victoria.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I am too. I'm really looking forward to this, actually. And I really like your name. My niece is a Victoria.
Okay.
Yeah, and honestly, if we didn't have a niece, Victoria, I would have pushed hard for that name for one of my two daughters.
Is she full Victoria or Tori?
She goes by, they call her Tori some. I always call her Victoria. I think when the family's together, I hear Tori some, Victoria mostly.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what her personal preference is, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I always, when it comes to people's names, I kind of like to stick to the actual, you know what I mean? Like, I've always been a little hesitant with nicknames. Because you don't know, like, do they like it? Do they not? I had one friend who went by another name forever, and then for whatever reason, like late 20s, he wanted to go by his real name.
That's what I did.
Everyone. Oh, really?
Yeah. So I was
everyone
Tori
already
my
knew
whole
you
life.
though as Tori. So then when you make the switch, so is that working or how's that working out?
Well, okay. So I've always gone by Tori because my parents didn't want me shortening Victoria to Vicky because my maiden name is Sinicki. So they didn't want Vicky Sinicki. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've always been Tori. But then when I came into my 20s, I was like, I kind of want to embody that. And I just think there's so much power in Victoria. So I was like, I want to be that. But I noticed that if I don't say Victoria or Tori, people always shorten it to Vicky. Or if I'm emailing someone, even if I sign Victoria, they'll sign Vicky.
No, they won't.
And it drives me crazy.
See, that to me seems rude.
Yeah, it's like, I'll give you my nickname if I want it, but I am giving you Victoria, so that's how I want to be.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right. Now, are they spelling it Vicki?
Yes.
So there's a lot wrong with that whole situation. There's a lot wrong with that whole situation. I'm surprised. Honestly, I'm surprised that people would do that. I'm surprised that if you sign your name. So my first name is Theodore, and my middle name is Kent.
Okay, that's my husband too.
Oh, yeah?
He goes by his middle name.
Yeah, so I swore that I wouldn't do that to my kids. And the reason that it is such is because I guess they like the names, but they didn't think that Kent Theodore Lapp, worked, which I agree with.
Yeah.
Like Theodore Kent Lapp rolls off the tongue better. But they didn't want me to go by Theodore because the name was too long, and I'd be Teddy, Ted.
Yes.
They didn't want any of that.
Yep.
So they called me Kent, and I kid you not, when we moved to Nashville in 2014, I was I think 30 years old. We had two kids, and my mom, who named me, was like, "Now you're moving to Nashville, from upstate New York, and no one knows you. What do you think about like changing your name to Theodore?" Like, Mom. That's like, maybe you should have thought of that 30 years ago.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm not going to go by Theodore all of a sudden.
You're like, it's a little late for that.
I appreciate the consideration. Yeah, we've crossed that bridge a long time ago.
Oh my gosh.
Congrats on the house. Did I see
Thank
you bought
you.
a house recently?
Yes. So we moved to Nashville 2 months ago, and we've been living downtown trying to figure out where we want to be, what area. And so we finally just bought a house. So we're in the process. My house is boxes everywhere. We closed Wednesday and our stuff came Friday. So we've been in the process of just trying to unpack. And it's been a little crazy, but it's exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. What part of town?
We're going to be in Gallatin.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we lived in Mount Juliet for when we first moved to Nashville. Now we live just south of Nashville.
Okay.
That's congratulations.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. And are you guys from Nashville or?
No. So actually, crazy story. So my husband is from North Carolina, and I'm from all over. This is my 11th state that I've lived in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I've been around a lot, but a couple of years ago, my husband and I were not together, and we had broken up for a while. And I was ready to get over him. I was ready to just like start my own path, and I wanted to move to Nashville. My sister lived here, so I was going to move. I got an apartment, got a job, and 2 weeks before I was supposed to move, my husband came back for me and was like, "I love you. I want to do this. I want to get back together. I want to get married." So I actually gave up my apartment here and moved to Savannah with him.
Oh, so he was in Savannah at the time?
Yeah, so he was an Army Ranger, Special Operations, and so I moved with him there and was really disappointed because I just like felt this is where I was supposed to be, but knew I kind of was like, well, I want to give this a try with him. We had been off and on. We had dated since college, and so I just wanted to see. So we'd always been long distance. So I was like, if we go long distance again, this isn't going to work because I want to be able to put in the time and actually be in each other's lives and not have that honeymoon effect every time that we see each other. And so I followed him there, and then he decided in January to get out of the military, and we were like, where do we want to go? And we started just applying to jobs everywhere, and the Nashville job kind of just fell in our lap, and I was like, yes, God, here we go. We're going to Nashville.
Okay, Nashville job for him. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you were living here, got back in a relationship with him, and then he was looking for a job all over the country. You didn't necessarily know you were going to wind up back in Nashville. And
No.
here you are.
Yeah, so I wasn't even
very
here
cool.
before. I had an apartment in 2 weeks before I was supposed to move here from Florida. That's when he came back for me.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But yeah.
So even before then, all right. So so you guys had moved to Nashville for the first time for both of you. Mm-hmm. When?
2 months ago, August 10th.
Really?
Yeah.
Welcome to Nashville.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's Andrew. Andrew's like he's like I think like the face of Nashville. Like if you like Andrew, you're going to like Nashville.
I love
Wouldn't you
it.
agree, Andrew? Like Nashville's, there's a lot of really good people here.
Yes, everyone's so nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you'll really like it here.
Yeah.
We love it here. Honestly,
Yeah.
we came home for us super quick.
That's how it felt. Like ever since even the first day that we got here, I feel like I can breathe again. I just love all the trees and the people, and there's just something about being here that I just love.
Yeah, I think you'll continue to like it. So yeah, I'm happy to hear that. For whatever reason, I was just picturing you in particular had been here for some period of time.
Yeah,
So
no.
yeah, well, you got I think it's a good mix between a small city and a big city.
Yep.
There's lots of great restaurants now.
Oh,
Of
yes.
course,
I've been eating my way through the city.
And you came at a difficult time for eating your way through the city too. But
Yeah.
thankfully, we didn't shut down here like some other cities
Yeah.
did, like LA and some stuff,
Oh, yeah.
some cities like that. But and I mean, there's parks around. It's just the weather's nice. So
All four
yeah.
seasons again, thankfully.
exactly.
But a little
Like-
bit of each. I lived in
Exactly.
Indiana for a while, and I cannot do that winter.
Right.
Yeah, it's not for me. We were
Yep.
going to move to Boston. That was like one of our top locations for a particular job. And I was like, I'm going to freeze up there.
Oh,
I'm
yeah?
not going to be able to do it. So I'm glad I have like a
Yeah.
good mix of everything again.
What industry is your husband working in?
So right now he's doing operational management right now, but he's kind of figuring out. It's really interesting actually to be a coach, and now I have my husband in this phase of his life where he always thought he was going to be in the military.
Okay.
And then dreams change, and
Yeah.
he decided it wasn't for him, and he did his time. And so now he's kind of trying to figure out what does that look like?
I see.
What do I want to do? What lights me up? And so he's in a bit of an exploration phase. And,
Yeah.
It's interesting with the military, you have to say you're getting out at a date before you have a plan. So he's said he was going to get out in September. In February, he picked that date. So he's just been on
I
a
see.
countdown trying to figure out what. And so
Sure.
he's like, I just need a step. And that's
Yeah.
what I just kept telling him. Like, you just need a landing page.
Yep.
And then from there, you can start having conversations and exploring and just seeing what lights you up. And it may take time.
Yes.
It took me like 6 jobs to get to what I'm doing now and what
Yeah.
I love and what I feel like I'm supposed to do. And
Yep.
so, military life is very different than civilian life. And so now he's just trying to figure out who am I as a person and
Yeah.
what do I want to do. And so it's really interesting to be there and not want to coach him, just be
Sure.
the wife, but also to help him as he's in this phase. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
that is an interesting dynamic because yes, you're his wife, but then you also have these skills, some of these experiences and things that like not every wife has, so you can help them in particular ways. Yeah, that is an interesting dynamic, but I could see
Yeah.
where you want to like, you don't want to just like coach him every hour of every day
yes.
either. That's not
Yep.
that could become overpowering too, I'm sure.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's it's an interesting thing in the relationship that not every couple would work through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Speaking of landing page, Andrew, can you pull up her website? It's is it healvictoriously.com?
Yes.
Healvictoriously.com.
Yep.
This is a really nice website.
Thank
Did you do
you.
this or
I hired someone. His name is Jordan Smith, and he is absolutely phenomenal. So I actually a year ago said that I was going to make my own website. First of all, I'm terrible with technology, not my thing. And it's really hard to make a website. There are so many things that you just it's just way beyond my head. And so I was just doing it over and over. I wasn't making progress. And so finally my husband was like, that's it. We're hiring someone.
Yeah.
And we went on, and Jordan's based out of Georgia, Savannah,
Okay.
Georgia, but he's done websites for everyone. His portfolio is amazing and he is awesome. So he had some details from what I had built before, but
Okay.
I told him kind of what I was looking for. And so I did all the copy. I wrote everything that's on there, but he
Okay.
did he did all the design aspect.
Yeah. So do you write? Have you written before? Who helped you with your messaging? Because your messaging, can you just scroll down on that a little bit, Andrew? I mean, so there's a couple things that stand out to me for initially on this. First of all, the design is very nice. The flow is very good. But then the second thing is the messaging is very clear.
Me,
So
I
that
did
was
it.
all you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You didn't have like a branding agency help you or anything?
Nope, all me.
Okay. Yeah, that's impressive because the
Thank you.
messaging is definitely on point.
Thank you.
Like when you come to this website, it's clear very quickly what it's about, who you are, how you can help.
Thank you.
And it's hard to get it that clear and clean. Phenomenal job for what you're doing. That's impressive.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a labor of love, but yeah, I've always loved to write, and I journal every night, and that's kind of like my process of thinking things through. But even growing up, I was always told you're a good writer, but I hated writing. I liked math, so I could see the problem, solve the problem. But then as I've gotten older, I've seen the beauty in writing, and so I would just write something and then step away from it, reread it, and just kind of go through it. But through meditation, it's been a lot of things that went into what do I want to say and who do I want to help? And I wanted it to be clear so people know, I'm not going to be for everybody, right? Everybody needs a different coach, a different person in their life, but I wanted it to be clear so people come and they just feel held and they just feel like, oh, this is like what I've been looking for all along. And so it was a long process and getting there, but yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it's mission accomplished for
Thank
sure.
you.
And you did a really good job writing your story. I assume you wrote that as well.
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
First time I've ever shared like most of that. Most people don't know that.
Really?
Yeah. So it was the first time kind of putting that out there.
Wow. Well, the story is very touching, and I'm not a crier, but when there's stories of people that have gone through hardship, like it seems like you have, and come out the other side of that, that does get me, I mean, that story, which I want to get to. There was another thing though that I was watching that I was having a hard time not crying, honestly, was your wedding video on Instagram.
Yes.
That is, all right, so it's just, you got married recently, and like, I guess is more common now than I think when we got married 15 years ago, is having like not only great photos, and video, but like a legit, like 5, 6, 7 minute, video compilation of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Those are usually, obviously, like most interesting to the bride and groom, and then close family. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
but it's cool for friends too, because you get to be a part of the experience. But like when you see those, or when I see those, like scrolling through, if it's not someone I know very well, like I've always scroll right past it. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's not relevant. It's not, but yours is extremely well done.
Thank you.
I mean, that is, that video on Instagram tells you guys' story very well.
Yeah, they are Wild Oak Films, shameless plug for them. They are the best. They travel. They're actually located, I think in Kansas.
Okay.
And I hunted. That was the one thing. I've been a dancer my whole life, so I'm very visual. And I like things moving. I love sound and that whole thing and how music plays in. So when I was searching, I'm like, yes, I want photography, but I want someone that can just tell this story.
Yeah.
So it's not only a message for us, but there's kind of like hope for other people, and just this picture of, I don't know, I just wanted it to be of service to other people, to God, just to, I don't know, just display that. And so we found them. I hunted and hunted and hunted, and they're just amazing at what they do. And we had conversations, what do we want? And we really just wanted to focus on the story, and they did it perfect. Everything they did.
Yeah, they really did. You said it was Live Oak Productions?
Wild Oak Films.
Wild Oak Films. And you found them on the internet somehow?
I found them on Instagram. Yeah,
Okay.
I was searching. I don't even remember at this point, but I had been searching, just going through wedding videos. I think I was on lovestoriestv.com too, and just kind of browsing videos. I watched probably way too many wedding videos to get to where I got to, but they're
so
just amazing.
Some are better than others.
They are, and they're just different. Some people want to focus on the partying and just that sort of, it just depends. And it's a husband and wife duo, and so they just vibe off each other, and it's just, was their sole responsibility to create this video?
and take some pictures on the side, or just the video?
Just the video.
Just the
yeah.
video?
I think it's, I don't know if they've done pictures, but yeah, we had a woman from Chicago come I know her through the family, and she's impeccable as well. Our pictures were amazing. Yeah.
So Wild Oak travels, obviously they travel around the country doing this.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's really impressive. All right. So let us hear about your story.
Okay.
And by the way, I have as much time as you have, and so don't kind of rush it here, because the story really is incredible. So, I'd love, just take us back from where you grew up and go for it.
Yeah. So I grew up in Colorado, and is that where you're from?
Points for Andrew.
Yeah.
Brighton originally.
Okay. I was born in Littleton, but grew up in Aurora. Yeah.
Colorado is the best. Let's just be honest.
Yeah. And I lived there until sixth grade, and I've never been skiing or snowboarding, which people think is just the craziest thing in the world. And
it's a shame.
I know. I was so focused on dance, and my brother was so focused on hockey that I just it didn't even cross my mind.
Okay.
So
well, dance and hockey, that's good. Those are good too.
Yeah. So, I have an older brother, and then I had a sister, and they were twins, and they're 3 years older than I am. And so they were born, and I think 6 weeks after my sister was born, she ended up getting cerebral palsy. And my mom knows the story better than I do, but I think she was born with forceps or something, and I think it just tweaked something. So she was born mostly okay, and then she developed cerebral palsy, so she couldn't walk and she couldn't talk. The most beautiful soul ever. You just being around her. She just had this light about her.
How much older than you?
3 years.
3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had a twin brother as well.
Yeah. So that's my older brother. Mm-hmm. And so we grew up in Colorado, and I danced. My brother played hockey, and first of all, she just had to get so many surgeries. The things that she went through, now reflecting back on that just amazes me, the strength that she had. And I mean, seriously, she just had this light about her. And it always amazes me. When I have bad days and I'm upset about something stupid, I think back to that and I'm just floored by her and just her strength that she had. And I think it's just such a beautiful lesson. And I just feel like every time someone was around her, no matter who it was, she just brought out the best in you, and she just had so much light and love. And as I've gotten older and reflected on that too, that's been really inspirational for me, because she couldn't walk, she couldn't talk, but so much love and joy and just this beautiful light exuded from her all the time. And so I just feel like she was healing people in her own way by coming to her and by seeing her.
Yeah. And that is interesting. She couldn't walk and she couldn't talk. Mm-mm. And yet you could tell that she was exuding love.
Yes.
How is that possible? What is it about the human spirit that emits that?
I don't know. And you can feel when you're with people energy, you can tell what they're feeling. And that's something that's really fascinated me, because you can I really don't know how to explain it, but it's just I just don't know how to do it without my hands, because that's just how it is. It just is I almost feel like it's just openness. When people live with an open heart, which is something I'm all about, I feel like you come across in the world totally different than you do when you're shut down. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy for us to be shut down because so many things happen, right? That harden our hearts and that we numb and we are just totally shut down. But when you can live through that and still come out totally just ready to love, no matter if you're going to get hurt or not, and still show up and play full out at life 100%, I feel like you give off a different energy. Yeah. And you show up different for people, and people feel that, right? Because when you do that, it gives someone else permission to do it.
Yes.
Because it's scary.
Yes. Yeah, you're totally right about that. Yeah, and that is, your sister's a great example of that energy. But then you're right. That plays out with us in day-to-day interactions. I feel like you can tell if someone is genuine, relatively quickly.
Yep.
And if they've got something they're hiding behind, a little squirrely, a little, maybe some fake, maybe some putting some fronts out there, you can pick up on that very quickly.
100%.
Could your sister give hugs and stuff?
You could hug her, but she couldn't really move her arms or anything like that. So it was just, obviously you're hugging her. So it was very interesting, because really, that's a lot of how we show affection, right? Is by hugging and touching and being in close with people. So but she still was able to give off like that same, it's the craziest thing. And sometimes when I think about it, it just like blows my mind. It blows my mind because so you could be around her, but it wasn't like she could just reach out and hug you or talk to you through things, but there's just something about her.
Yeah, that is really remarkable. And I wonder if, I feel like people that have experienced deep pain and suffering, well, I guess that can kind of go two ways often. It can go towards shutting down and having even more of a guard, or there's just a humbleness, a love that sometimes is born out of that, like beauty from ashes, because like you realize, like your sister, she couldn't walk and she couldn't talk, and yet you could tell that love was like emitting from her. Mm-hmm. But it had to be that way, or else she would have had to be like bitter. You know, it's hard to have a middle ground when you have that much you're dealing with at a very deep and real level. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there really isn't a middle ground, you know, like I guess numb, like being numb, you know, like you're either going to feel, you're going to power through and just open up and choose love and joy, or you're going to be angry and frustrated. And if you're not one of those emotions, because sometimes feeling into either of those emotions is scary. And so many people live in the middle in that just like numb.
Yes. Yes. When it comes to like the day-to-day interactions, you touched on that, which is a fascinating insight. I don't want to pass over too quickly, because you can tell when people are walking around with like, I don't know, what I would think of as sort of like a I don't know, what's the biblical term, like a clean heart and a pure mind. Doesn't it say somewhere in the Psalms about your conscience or something like that? What's the word I'm going for? It's something along those lines. Anyhow, like when people are, I guess, living in a way that's honest with themselves, and that is, you know, I guess honest with themselves and their creator. But even you see it in people that wouldn't believe in a God. I think sometimes like there's a piece about some people that you don't experience with everyone. And one thing that I've always kind of I guess just felt like other people deserved it from me is, you know, when you meet them, like look them in the eye, shake their hand, you know, like you're happy to see them, or if you're giving a hug, like, you know, make it clear in whatever sort of small interactions you have that you're glad you see them and you're glad they're there, you know, because every interaction leaves people, it's like a positive or a neutral or negative. Like that's how you leave interactions. This is something I was talking through with my 10-year-old son very recently, just helping him through an experience that didn't go very well in the kitchen, you know, with Mariana, because, you know, he wanted food and then it wasn't a good time to have food, and just he didn't handle that very well. And it's like, well, you know, the next time you ask for something, think through it in these terms, not so much like who's right and who's wrong or what should have happened and what shouldn't, but every time you interact with someone, like you're going to leave that interaction, they're going to leave with thoughts that are like positive about you, negative about you, or indifferent. And, you know, let's try to stay away from the indifferent and negative stuff. Let's have interactions with people that is positive, you know, because you can build up capital for yourself. And that then the next time when you want food a little bit before dinner, guess what? You've built up a little bit of that capital with mom, and she might actually let you have a little bit, you know? So, well, thanks for sharing that. Let's come back to your story, your family.
Yeah. So, my sister was, she passed away when, I was in 6th grade. She was a freshman in high school. And before she passed away, I don't know if it was a couple years, but she had been really struggling with a lot of surgeries and just really in pain all the time. And there were 2 things. We always took her to Hawaii, which she loved. And so that's such a special place for me. It's actually where her ashes are. But when she was there, I love Hawaii because I just think there's just an energy there too, right? It's just a beautiful thing. And I feel like that is who my sister was. Like we always called her borrowed angel, right? And I think like people are put here just to remind us that how to live, how we were created to be. And so, but a couple of years before she passed, she was struggling all the time, and our neighbor had come down to my mom to talk to her and told her about getting her on something called Juice Plus, and we ended up putting my sister on it, and she had 3 inches of bone growth in 6 months, and was just like, the teachers were like, what happened? Like, she's so happy. And so for the last couple of years, she just really was not so much in pain, and it wasn't as hard, and that was just such a blessing. So and that's really, I remember a lot of that because that's when I started to get older, was that whole kind of transition with her. But yeah, so she passed away when I was in 6th grade, and her celebration of life was so special. Everybody wore colors. No one wore black. And I still, when I think about it, we had a huge party at the house after, and just seeing everybody that she had touched, right? She was a freshman in high school, and the amount of people that came over because of her, yes, they loved our family, but they came for her. And just the impact she made in her short life leaves me speechless, because there are, rarely anybody does that. And in her short life, she was able to do that. And I think as I've gotten older, I've wanted to be able to carry on her legacy, right? So she couldn't walk, she couldn't talk. I can talk and I can move my body. So how can I carry on what she was doing with the gifts that I was given that she never was? And so that served as a huge inspiration, and really just what has made me want to be able to help people and to serve people, and to hold space for people in the darkness, just because I feel like she was able to do that. And I have the gifts that she didn't have. And so I can use them. And so that's just a really, every morning I get up, that's something I think about. How can I use my words and use my body to serve other people?
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, the impact that your sister had on all those people, but just the impact that she had on you alone, you're still here and you're active and you're very capable and you're going to do a lot of things. And some of that, a large part of that, might be because of your sister. I mean,
100%.
That's really amazing. Yeah. It's amazing how God uses, what seems like an unfortunate circumstance, and even what is not just seems like suffering, what is suffering.
Yep.
To work his good.
Yes.
I mean, it's like the Beauty from Ashes thing is not just a cliche saying. No. That is actually how it works. I was talking with really good friend Chad Carger. He's such an older, wise man. All his kids are in college now, and he used to be a pastor. Now he's a counselor, and he was talking. Well, he counsels musicians, like traveling musicians. Wow. And one thing you'll notice in Nashville is like we have a lot of music here, and it's just really great. But there's a lot of musicians that come in and don't make it, Right. But then there's some that do, and like the ones that really do, they tend to be out traveling and under normal circumstances, of course, and when you're not dealing with what we're dealing with now with COVID, but out traveling and doing gigs and everything like that. And so he just works with traveling musicians, which means these are successful people. Yeah. And the music is probably going fairly well for the most part. And at that level, though, even he said it's amazing how like the best songs, they all come from places of suffering, pain, brokenness, hardship, that type of thing. And you don't really, it's hard to get really good art in the form of music without very hard circumstances. Yep. So your parents, can we hear a little bit more about your parents before you continue on? Because they seem like they might have been nice people.
Oh my gosh, I love both of them. Yes. They're amazing. My mom is like my best friend. She's actually in town right now. She's helping me put my house together. But
that's nice.
yes, and my dad, and they're both, a lot of times a child with disabilities can really put a lot of tension on a family. And I commend my parents because they had so much strength and so much love for her and for us, right? Because it's a lot. It's a lot that you're dealing with, and they really just cared for us. And I also had a live-in nanny. Her name was Beth, and she actually officiated our wedding. But and she served.
Oh yeah, I saw her in the video.
So she has known me since before I was even born. So it was really like a little power family that we had. And, it helps because it's just a lot going on, but my parents are amazing.
Yeah. Do they live in Colorado still?
No. So after my sister died, everything shifted. It's just a big difference, a big gap. You could feel it in the house, and everyone deals with grieving in a different way. And there's no right or wrong way. And there's no amount of time that, you can't just give people 3 weeks to deal with it. It's something that comes in different stages of life. And so, my parents had us, but it was also a big change, and a big change for my brother as her twin. And so he left and went to a college preparatory school or boarding school in Indiana by his choice. My brother's brilliant without trying. So that's where he went. I think he just needed a different path when she passed. And so we moved out to North Carolina right after that. And that was I was starting 7th grade. And so my parents were together until I was at the end of my freshman year of high school. And then my parents split. My dad is remarried and he's still in North Carolina.
Okay.
And then my mom lives in Boca Raton, but she's kind of bounced around. She lived in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore and a bunch of different places around that area.
Yes.
And then I ended up going to Florida after college. My grandmother lives there. I call her Graham Cracker, and I just adore her. And we have such a special relationship. And so I went there after college. And so my mom followed me to be close to us. And so she's still there with Graham.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And you said the divorce happened when you were in 9th grade?
Yes.
Okay. And let's keep going with your story, because I know the divorce also had an impact on you.
Yeah. So divorce is never easy, and it's interesting now that I'm married and know more about relationships. Relationships are hard. And, I talk about this I have some single friends, and I'm always like, we live in a society where people marry for the wedding instead of marriage itself. And marriage it's amazing and it's very hard. And so it's interesting now to reflect on my parents' relationship and everything that they went through now that I starting to understand,
Sure.
marriage in itself and kind of what they went through together. And so they got divorced end of my freshman year. And then my dad remarried about 10 months later.
Okay.
And his wife had a daughter as well, who was I think she's like a year and a half younger than I am, which is really interesting. We had always been a family, and now you're bringing in someone else. But I also was away. I went to the same boarding school my brother did. So I wasn't home for the separation, which I think had blessings in it, because I didn't have to be part of that. I didn't have to choose between that. I was on my own and only had to worry about holidays and stuff. But yeah, it took a toll on me. And I was really angry for a long time. And just, I blamed my dad. And now that I'm older, I realize there are two sides to every story. And I totally think that my parents are better as friends.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think they had a journey together that served them. They were supposed to be there for my sister Lexi. And, they're both really doing wonderful. And I think that, now it's interesting to see. But at the time, I just held a lot of anger. And I saw my mom hurting, and I hated that. I've always wanted to be the fixer, which is really interesting as a coach, because you cannot be the fixer. But my whole life, if people are suffering, I will do whatever it takes at the expense of myself to help you. And so when I saw my mom just in pain, and obviously my dad, I took it out on my dad because he had a wife, right? So I felt like he was just forgetting about us.
Yeah. And
she had a daughter that lived at home. So it kind of felt like, I wasn't welcome. And this is my own story, right? My dad never said this. My dad's a wonderful person. But when life happens and when bad things happen, we all create stories in our head. And these stories that we tell ourselves define our lives. And you have the choice what story you make. And that is going to carry. And you can either keep adding to the story, or you can change the story at any time. So,
and on the divorce, was the most painful thing that you saw your mom was in pain and that hurt you? Was it that your parents, who you thought loved each other and would always be together, are no longer together? Is it that one or both has a new partner? Or is it that now you have a sibling that you weren't, air quotes, supposed to have? What parts of all that was the most painful for you?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And I think that's why it took such a toll on me, because it just was a stacking of things. And I talk about this too, like when something happens in life, it's going to serve you most if you look at that one thing, but it's easy for us to start stacking everything on top. And that's when it feels insurmountable. That's when it feels like you can't do anything. And so I think it was everything, honestly. And it was so much that I didn't understand. And I was so young that I was still kind of trying to figure out my sister being gone. And as I was getting older and starting to outlive her and realizing I was doing things that she never did, was really hard. And then, I just felt like, I think home has always been really important to me. I'm a Cancer, and Cancers are really big with home, and that has been. And so I think for the first time, I didn't feel like I had a home, because I didn't feel welcome in my dad's new family unit. And quite honestly, I didn't want to be part of it, because I was just angry. And my brother was kind of doing his own thing. And my mom was going through her process of not only losing her daughter, but then her marriage ending, and then who is she now?
Yeah.
And that comes with its own interesting exploration.
Yep.
And I think I was angry that I had a new sibling, because it felt to me that it was replacing my sister, I think. And so I think it was just too much too soon. And no one, people don't talk about the dark stuff, right? Dark stuff makes people uncomfortable. Death makes people uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people who knew me up until about 2 years ago, before I posted something, didn't even know I had lost a sister. And it's not something that I withheld, but it's also something that, like, you tell people, like, oh yeah, I had a sister and she passed away, and you hear the room, it's like,
sure,
people don't know what to do.
Yep.
And so I think that, and then my parents' divorce, like, I didn't have anyone to talk to. I was just trying to figure out how to deal with my own grief without having a way to deal with it. I couldn't burden my parents with it. I didn't know who to talk to. And so I just was kind of lost in my own world. And I think that's what led to my eating disorder. Was because it was the one thing in my life that I could control.
Sure.
And it was the only time that I could breathe. I was bulimic for a little while, and then it kind of switched from there. But when I would eat, when you eat, you breathe, which is why people in this society are so addicted to food, because we walk around not breathing all the time. Like, everyone holds your breath. You're always tense. But when you breathe, or when you eat, you start to breathe. Your stomach can, fill, and you start to slow down. Same thing with smoking a cigarette, right? Like, if you start to smoke a cigarette, you're breathing. That's how you do it. So it's all these things that we're addicted to that make us breathe. So really, breath is the key.
That's interesting. Let's come back to that. But first, the divorce. So you said 9th grade. So you're how old roughly? I
think I was 13 at the time.
Okay. So
13
you're
or 14.
young teen.
Yeah.
So I lost my dad to cancer when I was 10, and my mom raised us by herself, us 4 kids, and she did a great job. She's a very strong woman, which of course that's traumatic and difficult in its own right.
Yeah.
Now, the thing though that does seem extremely difficult is your situation where the mother and father split. Dad gets remarried. There's a new sister in the home, and it seems like when you see these things kind of play out in, I don't know, like I'm just picturing. I feel like I've seen this story kind of play out in certain movies or a TV show or something where it's like a narrative there where you can just. Like the person there is, you feel like there's no, like everyone's left you basically. Like it just seems like an extremely difficult situation to work through as a 13-year-old. Extremely difficult.
Yep.
The thing about, I guess, a death, you take suicide away because that would just seem very, I know that's very traumatic for kids because they also internalize that
100%.
So it may be a little different and hopefully not as extreme way, but when a divorce like this happens, do the kids also internalize some of it? Like, well, what did we do wrong? What did, like, you feel like did you feel like you were contributed to the cause at all?
Yeah.
And then there's no one that is here for you. There's no one that can understand. It just seems extremely difficult situation.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that because that was, I love to identify stories that I've carried throughout my life and that kind of have played out. And one thing that I always thought was that everybody I love leaves me.
I think that too.
Yeah.
I think everything that is good either will leave or die. That's what I think.
Yeah. And the scary thing about that is you can start to attract that if you see it, because whether you're making it happen, right? Like I had that fear in that story. And then I would sometimes try and keep relationships alive so much that I would push people away. And
so you would try to keep it alive so hard that you push it away?
Yep.
So I would tend to, if the relationship's really has a chance of getting deep, I would tend to sort of tap out early. And I'll still be friends, but I'll hold them at a little bit more arm's length. Yeah.
And it's emotionally, I held them at an arm's length, but I would do acts of service, I would say, to keep it, like if you need something, I'll go get you food or like show up in that way. But emotionally, I kept people. I mean, like my dating life, I never got close in relationships growing, all throughout high school and mostly through college too. I always kept people where I could see them and, never really tried to go into anything too deep. But, I think, that story of everything that I love leaves me, you can look at that in two ways and think like you did it, or maybe it's a way of setting things free that no longer serve you, because sometimes you're not supposed to keep things for forever. Right. And so just because it's good now, maybe it's not always going to be good for you. So maybe it is a blessing that it does go away because it's not serving you any longer. Yes. But you can also look at it thinking everything I love leaves me. So I'm not going to invest myself in love, relationships, anything, and you can keep that arm's length. But then what do you miss out on when you do that?
Yes. Do you mind sharing how old you are now, roughly?
Yeah, I'm 27.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you still feel like that do you still believe that everything that you love will leave you?
No.
Okay.
Nope. And that's something I had to do a lot of work on. But no, I don't believe that anymore. And and if I really truly believe, there's a quote that I love and I forget who said it, so I hate saying it, but we'll have to look it up and see. But it says, "I respect myself enough to walk away from anyone or anything that no longer serves me or makes me happy." And I love that. And because it's so true. And so I have now an outlook that if a friendship is dwindling or an opportunity goes away, then it wasn't meant to be. And it's not for my highest good, because I believe that what's meant for me will never miss me, and what misses me was never meant for me. It's another quote. I don't know who said it, which we'll have to Google, but both of those things, because I fully trust that if it's meant for me, whether it's a relationship or an opportunity, whatever it may be, if it's for me, I'm going to hit it head on.
Yes.
And if it's not, or if it leaves my life, then I respect that, because I know if it's meant to be, it'll come back, right? Like my husband, because we split up for a year, dated other people, and he still came back. And the way I just trust that things are going to find me again. And I find that serves me so much better. And it's a path that you are on every day of, like, if something happens, you have to correct yourself and think you can't go back to that old story, because it's so easy to assume the negative story and it's so easy to go there. And so it's learning how to catch yourself in the middle of labeling an event that happens and doing it in a way that's going to serve you and help you.
Yes. Yeah. I love that way of looking at it. What's meant for you won't miss you, and what misses you wasn't meant for you.
Yes.
Because, I mean, Andrew and I were just talking about this earlier today. Like, the sovereignty of God in all things is like, that's the one thing that we have to come back to, Yes. and God doesn't make mistakes.
He doesn't. And he fulfills his promises.
Yeah, and he does fulfill his promises. And man, that's like the ultimate, that's like the ultimate foundation there. And so when life does get wonky and things get out of control, and certainly feel like they're out of control and so forth, that is sort of that's the thing you can come back to, it's.
Yeah. And because if we're never in control. And so everything that's happened over the last couple of months, I think it's just reminded us that even though we think we're in control, we're not. But what I love too is that God always fulfills his promises and he's faithful, but it doesn't always look like what we think it will. Yeah. And so it's easy to get caught up in your own story and your own disappointment when really he's always going to do what's right for you, and he knows you, right? And so if you think negative, then you're going to miss out on what he's trying to show you.
Yes.
And so if you trust in him and you fully trust that he's going to show up, it might look totally different, and it might mean removing someone or something from your life, but he's always going to put something better in its place.
Yeah. That's a good word. Okay, so back to the issues with food. What is being bulimic?
So it's binging and purging. So you'll eat a lot of food, like way over the limit. And it's usually like eating really quickly and things you wouldn't normally eat, usually a lot of like carbs or sugar. And you're just like eating yourself until you're overly full. And then you make yourself throw up. Really glorious.
Like right after or later on? Or?
Right. It depends. I would do it right
but
after.
Not like the next day or anything like that.
No, like right. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. And I honestly, I had been a dancer and a cheerleader, and I had heard someone else on my cheer team had been doing it. And it really wasn't, I never thought I was fat. I never wanted to lose weight. It was literally just the one time that I just felt like I could tune everything out in my world. And I was by myself and my world was quiet because everything in my life felt loud. The divorce and the messiness of that and my brother's pain, my mom's pain, my sister dying, like everything just felt loud. And so the one time that I just felt like I could just close down, because when you're binging and purging, you're by yourself, right? Like you're not with a bunch of people doing it, you're alone. And I felt like it was my safe place in a really messed up way.
Sure.
But it was, and I would breathe and I could just be quiet.
Yeah. How is being bulimic different from being anorexic?
So anorexic, I think there are different forms of it. You can have exercise anorexia, I believe it's called. It might be called something different, but that's just where you over-exercise all the time. And then anorexia, you don't eat, or you eat very small portions, calorie counting, which from what I had gathered with myself and a lot of people that I've spoken to have had eating disorders, you kind of flow through all of them until you can find your way out. Because, you want to stop binging and purging. So then you think you're going to stop eating, and then you end up being starving. So then you binge. And then sometimes, like for me, my eating disorder kind of went on for years and it would stop and flow. But really, I didn't want to throw up anymore. So I got stuck in just the binging aspect. And I really, looking back, like if I had been meditating and actually breathing, I think I wouldn't have done it. But I think that was the only time that I just was breathing. And I felt like I could control, and it was like a treat to myself. It was just, So I kind of like flowed through all of that over a course of many years.
Did you put on a lot of weight when you just were doing the binging thing?
I didn't. I exercised all the time and was dancing. And so I didn't, but my stomach was definitely not happy. So I've had to do a lot of gut healing from that because just the toll that takes on your body is just tremendous. But yeah.
I've had a lot of gut healing this year. Okay. Last year was a very difficult year. We had, just related to business and work and things. And I don't know if it was an eating disorder, but I was eating like, pretzels and chips and junk food in the evening, like pretty much every night.
Yeah.
Way too much.
Yep.
And what helped me a little bit kind of to get, I think what was maybe a little bit of a savior was at least I was like doing intermittent fasting at that time. So I wouldn't eat until the afternoon. I feel like that helped a little bit because looking back, honestly, how I ate in 2019, I'm surprised that I didn't get in a worse shape. So this summer, this spring and summer really, the goals were get my gut healthy again and get back in shape again and be more active and, all of that. So I feel like I'm on that process of like healing the gut from the damage that I have done more recently to it.
Yeah.
The eating disorder. So is there a particular personality type that if they encounter very difficult situations are more prone towards eating disorders? Or is it just sort of like it comes and finds whoever it wants to kind of randomly? Do you know what I mean? Like certain people would go through a difficult situation and might do something different, like go on hard drugs or, go into depression or something. But then some people have this issues with eating disorders? Is there certain types of people or personalities that you've seen that are more prone to like going into an eating disorder?
I don't know. It's been a lot of different, like the people I've talked to or coached or come in contact with. I think it's a lot of different people because it's interesting because some people go into eating disorders because they have body image issues. And then some people go into eating disorders because it's a way to numb, right? We all numb in life, whether it's drugs, alcohol, food, sex, whatever else it may be. And so I'm not sure. And that's something that's actually I've talked about with my husband too, because I'm just curious. I'm curious about it too. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure the answer to that. Yeah.
Okay. So let's pick back up there. You're at what age now as you're dealing with the bulimia?
End of junior year. And this was really interesting. This is not a story that is on there. I don't think I included it in my website other than maybe I touched on it, but I had two best friends at boarding school. I lived with one of them. My other friend had come with me to school and, we were so close. And so my junior year, when I actually had the eating disorder, no one knew. But when I came back from summer, I was really thin because I lost a bunch of weight. I was probably like 85 pounds at that point as a senior in high school. And so I was obviously really tiny, but I had been working all summer to put weight back on. But when you're that tiny, it takes a lot and you have to be really diligent about it because I still wanted to be active, right? I had done all this damage to my body and I was like, I want to put weight on, but I want to do it the right way. I don't want to eat a bunch of junk food and then not like myself. And then I go back through that cycle. So I really wanted to be intentional. And my mom I'd lived with her that summer and she had just been cooking for me and just like re-showing me how to eat healthy and what that looks like. And how to do it the right way. Because it was interesting, actually, what had stopped this, which they didn't include there, but my mom and I had a conversation that summer when I was so tiny, and she had said to me, I don't want to lose another daughter.
Oh, whoa.
And because I was so thin and I was just, you're on a path and it happens so quick because your body can't function. Your hormones aren't functioning at that point. I was always freezing. My hair was falling out. It's just your body, you're not giving your body nutrients. And so it's like slowly draining life out of you, not only physically, but just emotionally too. I was a shell of a person at that point. And so that kind of woke me up. Right. And I was with her all summer and I was like, okay, I'm going to turn this around because this isn't worth it. And I can't imagine doing that to my parents. So I'd really worked hard all summer, but I was still very thin. And coming back to school, you're in high school, people are mean. And so people were very judgy. And I was constantly counting my calories to make sure I was eating enough. Because I had a set thing that would make sure I wouldn't lose any more weight. And so I was gaining weight, but I had to be diligent because, I wasn't that hungry all the time to be eating as much as I needed to. And so I was constantly just keeping up with it. And I remember my two best friends came in to the room one night and they said that they couldn't watch what I was doing to myself. And I was a danger to myself and they couldn't be part of it and they couldn't be my friend anymore. And so my roommate actually moved out and moved in with my other friend. And my entire senior year, they would walk past me in the hallways and not even acknowledge me. And these people were my best friends. I lived with them. My one friend I had begged to come to boarding school with me from North Carolina. And it was just like, I wasn't there. I didn't exist. And actually, I got my leadership positions taken away. And because of them, I had to go get weighed every morning. And I was threatened to be kicked out of school if I didn't keep my weight. And I had to talk to a therapist. And somehow people thought I was like mentally unstable. And I was like, look, guys, like, I'm fine. I've been through a lot, but like, I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, I'm fine. And that was my first encounter actually with therapy. And I hated it. Because I felt, at least who I saw, that she was trying to categorize and diagnose me. And I wasn't interested in that, right? I'm not interested in living in the past. I've already lived there and I've been living there, which is what got me in this situation. So I want to move forward. And so my mom thankfully got me out of that so I didn't have to. But my senior year was really, really challenging because all my friends who were my friends were no longer my friends. And at our boarding schools, there's a lot of tradition for being a senior. You can go to certain places that other grades can't, and there's just a big tradition school. And so just that was taken away from me. So that was really hard. And thankfully I met someone who I had danced with and we had been friends. We became best friends and she was in my wedding and her name's Emily. She's still one of my diehard friends, and we became close. And so now looking back, I see that made room for that friendship, which is it's just so beautiful. But my senior year was really hard, and it really changed me as a person because it really shut me down.
Yeah. I mean, it would have to. I just can't imagine. Man, guys can be hard on each other, but man, girls, I feel like they have the ability to be
mean.
Just so mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine being in a boarding school with two of your best friends and them not being your friend and ignoring you in the hall. I mean, I just can't, like, it's hard to wrap your mind around first of all, how you get through something like that. And then second of all, how that doesn't just scar you for life, because what's particularly difficult is that reinforces your story that everyone or everything that you love leaves you. Like, that's a massive reinforcement of that story. And that's very bad.
Yeah. And it made me feel like an outcast. Like, I felt like I was just an alien walking around. And, like, we were young. And so sometimes I think like, well, I'm not going to tell that story because I never like want to offend them. But I'm like, that is a huge part of how I became who I am today. Right. And, people are young. And I think that's what's so hard about being young is you just don't know. And sometimes you do things. And I had actually spoken with one of the girls years later, and she apologized and just said, we were so young and it got out of hand so quickly, and I didn't know what to do to fix it.
Sure.
But yeah, so even entering college, I was really shut down. I felt like an outcast. I didn't speak much because I felt like people would be judging me. And I was on my college cheer team, dance team. Like, I was a big face of the school, of the spirit program. But I didn't really go to a lot of parties. I kind of kept my distance. I was very quiet and just something I had never been in my life. I've always been a person that, like, I'm blunt and I speak my mind. And even growing up, my mom loves to tell the story, but I used to dance, and when I was done, I was done. Like, if I had done enough practice and I felt I was good, I would tell my teachers, like, nope, I'm done for the day. Thank you. And my teachers used to hate it. But I was like, I know my limits. Like, I'm good. And then I'd go out on the stage and I'd rock it, but I'm not gonna, like, I know myself. And so I have no problem speaking up for myself, but I did, like, I just became this different person. And I think after everything that had happened, and then my senior year, it just really shut me down to a point that I didn't know how to come out of. And I didn't, I had amazing friends in college, the best college experience. And each year, I started to grow even more. In my sophomore year, into my junior is really where I came back to my faith. I had kind of, when everything was happening in high school, I just couldn't imagine that there was a God that would allow this to happen. And so I was just angry. I was angry at everybody and everything. And, anger is really just a facade for hurt and pain, but anger is easier to be than just in pain and sad.
Yeah.
And so I was just angry all the time. And finally, my sophomore into junior year of college with my dance team, we had a Bible study. And so I started kind of going back into that. And that's really when I started for the first time looking at what is forgiveness and what does that look like, which has served to be a super powerful, just thing in my life, and that I've carried through, and that has allowed me to heal so much of my past, forgiving other people, forgiving myself, forgiving what I did to my body, and knowing that I'm forgiven by my body and by other people as well. And, in my pain, I'm sure I hurt other people as well, hurt people. So so it was just a lot of forgiveness that had to be done. And I started with just forgiving my parents and that whole messy situation that, they weren't doing it to hurt us or to spite us or because of us. It's their own journey, and I totally respect them, and I want them to have exactly the life that they believe that is right for them, and whatever that looks like and what's aligned with their highest good. But I never would have gotten there without, getting back just into my faith and just into forgiveness and not only with people I know, but just offering that space for people. Cause I think it's really underused, the power of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And so just holding space for people to have forgiveness for whatever they need to.
Yeah, for sure. It's forgiveness or bitterness. I mean, there doesn't seem to be many other options with that. That is the thing. I mean, and the Bible talks a lot about forgiveness, you know, so it shouldn't be a surprise to us that it's as necessary as it is.
Yeah.
But,
well, it seems so simple. right?
Yeah,
It's like,
it does.
and I think people get caught up in like, well, they're not apologizing, but forgiveness, it's, it's not for the other person. It's for you. And it's the only thing that's going to set you free.
Yeah.
It's the only thing.
It's true, but before you like experience true forgiveness, you just feel like you can't let that go. You know what I mean? You feel like you can't let that go and truly forgive that and move on because I don't know why that is. Like maybe in some way you feel like you're going to lose some power over that thing or some say over what happened. And maybe hopefully in some way by not forgiving, like the universe will treat them like they'll get what was owed to them, because you haven't forgiven them yet. And if you truly forgive them, then they're just going to get away scot-free and you don't have control over it. There's no power anymore. And all you got was the negative, impacts of their actions. And now they've gotten forgiveness and that doesn't seem fair. But when you're in that state, it is really a state of bitterness, whether we like to admit it or not. And bitterness is just cancerous, you know? So,
but it becomes part of your story, like not forgiving someone and holding that becomes part of your story. And so I think there's some fear in like, if I forgive them and I let that go, who am I without that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, when you were walking through this forgiveness, was it specific and like where you put, I don't know, had a particular prayer or in therapy or just on your own kind of a process where you kind of wrote through or something where it's like a little bit more official sort of forgiveness? Or was it just more like the way you were thinking over that period of time and in your prayers and in your thought processes and just kind of a more natural, organic kind of releasing of forgiveness?
I think it's a little bit of both. I did write letters that I never sent, but I wrote what I felt that I needed to let it go, and then I burned them and let go of them that way.
Okay.
And I think it really became a retraining of my mind into how I was thinking about things and situations and people and what was guiding my life versus the stories that had been guiding it for so long and the pain that had been guiding my life. And so I think it was a little bit of both. I wasn't the only, that was really, I think that was my therapy, forgiveness and just kind of working through that. And I think talking about it, I've always loved depth and deep conversations. And I have a dear, dear friend. Her name is Anna. And she and I have always been able to have conversations. And she's the one that actually invited me to that Bible study. And so we would go on walks. And I felt I would just share things that happened in my life, but from a way that I was looking at it different. And I think in that way, I was able to start processing the forgiveness and retraining my brain, because I had carried that pain in those stories for so long that you can't just stop those, right? It's become a habit. It was ingrained in me. And so I think the more I talked about it or thought about it or wrote about it, it was starting to become the new story and the new habit in my body.
Yeah.
But I think there's so much power in words and in writing and in that pen to paper. And when you set the intention of like, I'm writing this to let this go, to get this out of me, to put it on paper. So it's no longer living inside, because when you have so much living inside of you, it's really hard to have the rational side of you kind of talk you through it, because it just feels jumbled. And so I think when you can write it down and you can see it and you can just imagine that it's just coming out of you and on paper, it feels like it has less power over you.
Yes. Yeah, it most certainly does. There was one practice that I had heard, this is a little different, but helpful nonetheless, was like when you really have issue with someone. This was years ago. This was before I was married. I was a teen, I remember. Like sometimes, right, when you're frustrated with someone, write an email to them that you just never send and you delete, or write it down on a letter and then burn it or throw it away or something like that. And I did that a time or two over that time, and it was helpful. I'm trying to think if I have written. I don't think I've done what you have when it comes to forgiveness. And you literally just took pen to paper and would write out. Did you write out, here's how you hurt me, here's, how I was wronged, this is how it kind of maybe even reinforced some negative storylines in my life, this was some of the long-term impacts, and even all that said, I'm still hopeful for the future and I forgive you and I'm going to move on. Is that kind of the content of that letter, or what did you have in there?
Yeah. Most of the letters I actually wrote to myself. because I felt that I wanted to forgive myself for the way I dealt with things and to offer grace to myself for the things that I went through. And so that kind of just looked like talking about what I was feeling and writing and revisiting those situations that had caused me so much pain. So like there are moments that I remember, like I remember the day that my dad told me that he was, divorcing my mom. And then I remember the night that my friends told me they weren't going to be there, and all these moments that I remember. And so I would take myself back to those moments and just kind of not relive them, but allow myself to almost talk to myself from an older state to my younger self. So writing back. And then I did do letters that were, just totally probably not PC and just talking it out and just writing what I felt and just the betrayal or any emotions, but it was really focused on emotions and what it caused me to feel and how it caused me to do things so that I could start to understand why I have all these things that I do. Like, why am I shut down? I want to know what shut me down, because that's the only way we can move forward, because those events caused the story that was leading my life. And so I think it was honestly a little bit of both, but I did write a lot of letters to myself, more so than I did to the people that hurt me, because I didn't really want to waste energy on that anymore, but I wanted to give myself space to kind of understand and to just love on myself.
Yeah, you mentioned for writing letters to yourself and forgiving yourself. Is, of all the people that you had to forgive, was forgiving yourself the hardest one?
Yeah, and I think the anxiety that I went into a couple of years ago, I think that was partially that from that. I think I had so much disappointment and anger in myself and in the way that I had treated my body and before I understood like why, like looking back, it's always so easy, right? Like I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I went through all these things so I can serve other people and help other people.
Sure.
And it's made me really, really strong in who I am and who God created me to be. But when you're in those situations, even a year or two out of them, it's really hard. And so I think I was just still feeling so much anger, and I didn't understand like who I had become and just how I had handled things, and why I dealt with things the way I did, which made me lose my friends. Like I just thought that I had pushed everybody away and that I had messed up all these things. And so forgiving myself for all of that was really, really difficult. And I think like loving other people can be easy. It can be hard, but I think loving ourselves is so hard because we judge ourselves and we look at ourselves at a much harder scale than we judge other people. And I was actually talking about this with a client the other day who really just is having a hard time loving herself. And I asked, like, if your kids mess up, do you love them unconditionally, or does it come with, I'm only going to love them if they do X, Y, and Z? She's like, unconditionally. And I asked her the same about her, her parents, her siblings, and her friends. And it was all unconditionally. And same with, with God, even though like God never lets us down, but sometimes we think he does, but he never does.
Yeah.
And then I asked her about herself, and she said, well, I can't love myself like that because I haven't done this, or I don't do this, or and loving ourselves is extremely hard. And that's why I'm such an advocate and so passionate about it, because life changes when you love yourself, and not when you get somewhere, not when you achieve all the things, but when you love yourself now in all your imperfections, because they're not imperfections at all. They're exactly who you're supposed to be, but it's so hard. It is so hard to love yourself.
Well, it is hard. And have you found that it is harder for some personalities than others? Like I picture that loving yourself, forgiving yourself is harder for maybe more, I don't know how to exactly define this, but maybe for more driven or goal-oriented personalities, and it might be a little easier for other personalities that might be less driven or goal-oriented. Do you think it's just equally hard for everyone to love or forgive themselves, or do you think certain personalities deal with it even more?
Yeah, so I think it's hard for everybody. But I think that people who are driven, type A perfectionists, I think it looks different because that's a whole nother standard. So I think that everybody struggles with self-love, but I think the journey of what that looks like and then the journey to get there is totally different. Because, your people who are very goal-oriented, they want to love themselves once they've achieved all these things. And so they're very just like, go, 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 go. But then you have a lot of people who they're not like that. They're, but they can't get themselves out of the muck of the stories. So it's just very like, these people are go, go, go. These people are moving so slow because they're just buried underneath all the crap that's happened. And so I think it is for everybody.
Yeah. I think I would assume people that deal with depression also, that fleshes out differently for different people, but I deal with depression from time to time, and it is almost always, like, I think it's basically every time, but almost always it is a result of basically me spiraling into, that you shouldn't have done that. You're an idiot. Why do you always mess that up? Why can't you do better? Why can't you be, all of this? And it just spirals. So it's a very it's a depression that comes from, well, it's not loving yourself, not forgiving yourself, not giving yourself the amount of grace that you give other people.
Yes.
Not giving yourself the benefit of the doubt, because quite honestly, I don't really think I don't feel like I have much trouble giving other people the benefit of the doubt. Like, that's always been a thing, but I don't give myself the benefit of the doubt very much at all. So it tracks with exactly what you're saying.
100%.
So this was your senior year in college?
So
when
this
you started this process of forgiveness?
It was really like end of sophomore year, mostly junior year, that I would say that I went through that.
Okay.
But, I started to forgive other people, but I still was carrying, I still hadn't processed through it, all the crap that had happened. Right. So forgiveness was like the first door, but I had been, in my junior year of college, I was how old are you then? Like 20, maybe 19. So, a lot of stuff had happened and that was like the door. The forgiveness was just like cracking open to all the crap that I had stuffed down for so many years, which is really interesting working with like younger clients who have not carried the stories as long as people in their 50s have. And so it's like twice as hard sometimes to go through all the stuff to get there. But so I think forgiveness kind of just like cracked open that door. But yeah, so that was, really mostly my junior year was when that was really kind of coming about.
Okay. So. And then if let's pick up the story there again, if that's you kind of covered that part.
Yeah. So after that, my story after that for a little while, I met my husband my senior year. I had actually sworn off dating 4 months before I met him. I had read When God Writes Your Love Story and was like, just done with dating. And I was like, you know what? I want to do this the right way. And so I was going to take a year off. And my best friend was a debutante. She had grown up with my husband and she was a debutante. And I went to her debutante ball and he was her marshal. So it was her now husband and then my husband that walked her down the aisle and presented her at this whole thing. And so I met him there.
You met your now husband there.
Yes.
Hadn't known him before that.
No. And yeah.
And what is a debutante?
I think it's like a coming out of a young woman to society. It's a Southern tradition. I don't really know that much about it. But they wear white dress and they walk down the aisle with, I think their dad walks them and then the marshals do, or no, it's opposite. The marshals walk them down, then she walks back by herself, I think. So I think it's all about just like a young woman being announced to society.
What age is this normally?
Hers was when she was 21. But I'm not sure I think that there are people that do it younger. I don't know much about it other than that I knew it was a big party and that was going to be a good time. And she was my best friend. So I was like, I'm there. I'll support you. So I met him there and we really didn't talk like the whole time. I thought when I met him in her kitchen, I felt like everything stopped and so did he. But then the rest of the weekend, we really didn't talk except for the last night we were there, my best friend's now husband told me that he was going to propose to her. And I was like, well, I have to tell someone so I don't tell her. So I ended up telling my husband that night. And, but then we went our separate ways and we ended up kind of talking back and forth and joking about him coming to visit me over the holidays. And he did come visit me. And then we were together on and off for there. But, my husband lost a sibling as well and comes from a divorced family. And so I think my husband, he was the first person that I really ever showed up fully to love in a relationship. And I think I felt comfortable doing that because he had gone through similar pain. But I think in that there was also a mess. It was a mess because we were depending on each other to fix what had been broken by other people, by events, by our past, instead of healing ourselves and then coming together. And so our relationship was fierce and passionate and beautiful, but there's also a lot of pain. You know, we'd come together for these weekends that would be amazing, and then we'd leave, and all he wanted to do since he was little was be in the military. So all he cared about, not all he cared about, but he was very focused. He's a very focused man. And I wanted our relationship to work. And so I was pouring into it and not receiving the same thing back. And so there was a lot of heartache in this really beautiful relationship. And I really felt like we were supposed to be together, but I was constantly, just so much pain, so many fights, and then a lot of beauty in it too. And so it was very confusing. And so we actually broke up twice, I think. Yeah. And so we dated through senior year, broke up after we graduated, got back together, broke up again. We're broken up for a year, and then we came back together. And in that time, a lot changed. I started working for Lululemon out of college, which was really one of the most beautiful blessings for me. It's such an amazing company because it's what really opened me up to goals and self-development and leadership, and really like this idea that you can create who you want to be. It takes work, but putting the pieces together and kind of training like you train at the gym, but you're training these different muscles inside of you. And I was exposed to the Landmark Forum and just a bunch of different leadership courses through them, and led vision and goals, and just really fell in love with this idea of like, if we dream it, we can have it. And just that manifestation and just the power that comes behind that. And I remember it was one December, and I was sitting just in a wreck. Like after college, I was just kind of all over the place. I was kind of partying a lot and still numbing in a way. I had gone back to kind of binging, and I was just drinking a lot with my friends, and I've never really liked alcohol. And I just felt like I was living a life that wasn't me. And I had always in my life kind of lived my life to impress my dad. And I really just wanted his approval. And so I wanted a major that I felt like he would be proud of. And this is, of course, all me. He's always been proud of me. But I just wanted that approval. I wanted to just feel like I had earned that. And so, and I really spent my life living for other people. You know, if other people wanted me to do something, I would do it so they would like me instead of speaking up for what felt true to me. And so after college, I was just kind of a mess. And I was working for Lululemon. I had gotten into personal training, really just wanted to use that aspect, right? I had thought about my sister, and I was like, well, I have this physical body, and I know how to train myself and other people. And I really fell in love with personal training. But as I started to get into it, I realized that it's so much more about up here than it is about the actual training itself. So that is where my journey kind of switched. But so I was sitting on the couch, really just in a low. I think my husband and I had just broken up. It was December, and I was watching I'm Not Your Guru by it's a Tony Robbins.
Oh, that is a really great documentary.
It's amazing. And I remember sitting on my couch and just like bawling my eyes out. And I was like, I'm going to be at that event next year. At the time, I think I was making like $20,000 a year. So like nothing. Living in Boca Raton, which is so expensive. And I was like, and I think the event's, $5,000-$6,000 or something. And I was like, I'm going to be there. Don't know how, but I'm going to be there. And I felt it like in me.
Wow. And I'm Not Your Guru is about Tony Robbins, or about unleashing the power within, or is it
Date
about
with Destiny?
Is it about Date with Destiny?
Yeah, it's that event.
Oh,
it's his
okay.
event. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So UPW is like the starting. It's a 4-day event.
I've been there.
Yeah, me too. So many times. And then Date with Destiny is the longer, more intense. And it's one that he talks about. He just has a lot of pride in, because he created it out of a moment where I think he was really in a dark time. So he created this event. But I saw it and I was like, I need all of that in my life. And so February rolls around, and my mom calls me one day. I'm at work, and she's like, would you like to go to UPW? And I'm like, what? And she had met someone she is really into self-development. Both my parents are, which has also been really cool for me as I've gone on that journey, because it opened up all these different ways to speak and to start understanding everything that had happened. And she had met someone who had an extra ticket and was willing to give it away. And she was like, my daughter would love to go. But it was in California. It was like a week and a half away from when she called me. And I was like, I had never flown that far by myself, stayed by myself in a hotel. But I was like, I have to go. Like, even if I lose my job, I'm going. I'm going to be at this event. And I went, and the first day I kind of didn't play full out. You know, I wasn't dancing. I was really focused on what other people were thinking.
Were you by yourself?
By myself.
You went to UPW by yourself?
In California.
And what year, by the way?
I was there. What year was that? I went to Date with Destiny in 2018. So I think it was 2017.
2017 in LA?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we went in 15 or so.
Yeah, it was 17. It was 17. Oh, wait. I went to Date with Destiny in 17 and to 17 before 18. I think. I don't know, too many years, but yeah. So I was there and I flew out by myself. I remember I got in really late and I was just like, what in the world did I just do? Like, I'm in the middle of LA by myself. It's like midnight. I don't know anybody here. I'm at this event. But I also remember sitting there and feeling for the first time in my life so free and so empowered that I had done that, right? Like, I had gotten on that plane and I'm by myself across the country from everybody that I know. And I'm doing it for me. And that was the first time that I'd really done something for me and that I had just felt so much, I just felt driven, like I knew that's where I was supposed to be. And it was one of the most eye-opening, just like, oh my gosh, I loved that experience. And it was the first time that I had told myself that I love myself, you know, the last day where you do that final meditation. And I remember saying to myself, they tell you to say your name and then say, I love you. And I had never once used my name and then said that I love you after it. And really had never just said to myself, you know, I tell people all the time, like, if I love them, I'm going to tell them, but I never tell that to myself. And I just remember sitting there sobbing. And I remember I had hooked up with a couple people, you know, you meet people and then you just kind of stay with them for the rest of the event. And I just remember standing next to them and just bawling my eyes out, not because I was sad, but because for the first time I just felt like I had just given myself this gift that nothing else in life feels that way. Like, it's just, there's no way to describe it. Yeah.
He does such a good job at that event. That's the only Tony Robbins event that I've been to. And I still love to go to conferences and events. I mean, it's one of my favorite things. There's something about energy, about being around other people that you just really can't replace. And you can't do it on Zoom either. It doesn't work. But what's fascinating about Tony Robbins is that he is, and this is something where like I like to read, whether it's philosophy or read people that are not believers, and they have value too. Like it's still from God. It's from God's common grace. And Tony Robbins, I actually don't really know where he falls spiritually, but he is so gifted with understanding human behavior and the science, neuroscience, basically, that goes behind his events is amazing. Amazing. Everything from how long is the event,
when it starts,
the time of day that it starts, how late it goes, the temperature in the room, the music that plays, exactly when, exactly how loud, the speakers he has on. I mean, it's because, again, UPW was the only Robbins event that I've ever been to, and there are still, I remember the thing that I remember the most is it was probably like the second or the third day. I mean, he understands, like, it's just like great music. Like, it takes you on a journey, and he understands how to take people on a journey over a multiple day, which you would even know more about with Date with Destiny, which I can't wait to hear about. But even with UPW, I think it was like a $500 or $600 event. And so he'll take you on this journey, and on the second or so day, third day maybe, there was just this practice of, I think we even did some breathing exercises, and then it was like writing down, what do you love, what do you hate, and then some other things. But it was like he had the crowd like worked up, like, you're yelling this, and I jotted. I know he had us jot it down, but I'm always like a voracious note taker, and I still that was 2015, I believe, and I still go back to my Evernote on that occasionally and just look at that point in time, what did I love and hate, and some of those things, because it has been a fairly consistent. It's been true since, you know, and I like that that's what I like about journaling is because I can't always trust my thoughts in the moment.
Yep.
But if I can look back over a 10-year or 5-year or 3-year period of time, and look at some of the common like threads over those periods of time, or what did I think then and on a particular issue, 5 years ago, more recently, last year, this year, then it sort of reinforces my thinking about what I might plan to do next, know? And so UPW was pretty instrumental with putting a very significant stamp in time on my life with a lot of those things, really.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I still think back to my first event. I've been to 3 and I've crewed.
Wow.
I've crewed 2 and just UPW events. Then I've been to Business Mastery and Date with Destiny now since.
Whoa.
But
wow.
Yeah. I was.
In what year? In like a 3-year period of time?
No, I went to all those events in like a year and a half. And then Business Mastery, I just went to this last January. But yeah, I was like,
wow.
I think for the first time I had felt alive in my own skin.
Yeah.
And I think for the first time I felt the power of what it looks like to actually consider and work through what your stories, your limiting beliefs, what had happened in a way that's going to push you forward and not just keep you stuck, know? And I just felt so empowered and I just needed to be around that to push me forward.
Yes. Andrew, can you pull something up there? Pull up, I think it's Laura Benanti. Does that name ring a bell?
No.
She's an actress.
Okay.
Let me see if I Google Laura Benanti, Andrew. Yes. Okay. All right. So Laura Benanti, she is an actress. She's received 5 Tony Award nominations, blah, blah, blah. Okay. My point is she's a somewhat of a famous person. So this is LA. So this is on the way home from UPW. And I came home late Saturday night, I feel like, unless I have the days wrong. But I know I didn't stay for the last day.
Okay.
And I mean, I am jazzed up because keep in mind, I love events to begin with. And it was a pretty significant stamp in time. It was very helpful. And when I get in a creative state, like I, have ideas and stuff. So I am on, well, first of all, I'm in the Southwest. So standing in line, and here's this, like not middle-aged, younger mom with a girl who looks like, I don't know, she's probably 5-6 years old or something like that. And she asked me, I think, where I stood in line or something like that. And I didn't pay much attention. We just had a friendly exchange. And I'm on the plane flying back to Nashville late on this night, coming home from the UPW event. And I had this idea for basically what would be a franchise that would involve like like dancing for families. And so it would be like community driven. It would be good exercise, but it would be a great like thing to do as a family. And then the side benefit is like you can learn dance, which is cool too.
Yeah.
And I'm not a dancer, but I mean, when the music's playing, you have to be moving. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like that's just, and there's really nothing greater than like playing great music loudly and dancing with your family. That's your kids. It's great. So I'm writing this thing out. I still have the Evernote right here, and it's like 3 or 4 pages of like the business model. And I'm thinking about like who the target market would be, who the demographic would be. And it occurs to me that that lady who I had that brief exchange with in the ticketing line is basically the demographic. And so I take my notebook back to her and just gave her the notebook and was like, hey, if you don't mind, read over this and let me know what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
So she did, and I still have her handwritten, like she circled a couple of things and wrote a couple of things. But I noticed like when I went back to her, she seemed a little bit taken aback, which anyone's going to be if this weird stranger walks up to you on an airplane, hands you a notebook and is like, hey, can you read this and give me your thoughts? Like, of course, But she was very gracious, and so she wrote down some thoughts, and she thought it was a great idea, and she said the name of someone in Nashville that I should connect with, who was kind of an entrepreneur as well, and just mentioned that like she and her husband and their kids like occasionally like dancing in their home too, around music, whatnot, in the kitchen, like it's great. So for whatever reason, I was on Twitter the next day, and as it comes to find out, I pitched Laura Benanti on my franchise dance idea.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So I didn't follow up with her because it's like, well, if that idea came to fruition, I should have followed up with her relatively quickly and had her be like a brand ambassador or something, you know?
Yep.
So anyhow, that's my UPW story.
Wow.
Back to though your experiences. I'd like to, at some point, I'd definitely like to hear more about Date with Destiny and even the business one too. So maybe now's as good a time as any to hear back on that. But then I definitely want to pick your story back up.
Yeah. So went to UPW and then I crewed, which is just an amazing experience because you're getting to serve people and watch them through that experience, which is just it takes it to a whole other level because you're listening to things and you're in the room or, you know, you're around it again, but now you're having to step up another level to show up for other people to support them through this process. Cause you know, it's a lot, it's a big emotional event, this whole thing. So I absolutely love crewing, and I met 2 people at that event who were crewing with me, and we just really hit it off. And I remember after the event, we were on our way up the escalator, and the whole event we had talked about Date with Destiny because one of the male who was with us, the guy that he had been to Date with Destiny, was like, you guys have to go. And I was like, great, I love it, but I make $20,000 a year. Like, where am I going to do this? And this was in July. And I remember at the end of the event, we were going up this big escalator, and we were talking about like, okay, are you guys going to do it? He asked us like, are you guys going to step up or you're going to do it? And we kind of just looked at each other and we were like, oh crap, like we're going to do this. Like we have to do this. And so we decided and we made him, we were like, okay, if we're going to step up and do this, like where are you stepping up in your life and going to show up bigger? And so he made a commitment as well. And so I remember going home after that event being like, how am I going to pay for this event? But I have to go. I have to be there. I said I would be there, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out. And I know it's what I need. And so I remember just to pay for the event, I had to get my first credit card of my own. And it was my first experience of really starting to understand that you have to invest in yourself. And there's so much power when you do. You know, it's great to serve other people, and you have to do that, and you have to serve yourself so you can still show up for other people. And so that was my first experience of like, this is a lot of money, and I don't really feel like I deserve to do that for myself. And if someone else asked me to do it for them and they needed it, like I would find a way. And so it was kind of one of those moments for me that was another choosing myself moment and kind of empowering me to stand up for me. And so I found a way to do it. And I showed up, and that is my favorite event. There's nothing like it. It is so intense, and it is so, I mean, you go into detail about everything. You look at your values and you write like values that you have had that you don't want to have anymore, a new set of values, and you're meditating and you're crying and you go through all these different exercises, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody that hasn't gone, but it is the best money, one of the best money that I've spent in my life. I don't know how to properly say that, but
places you can throw your money.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I came out of that event a different person, even through the days, like a couple of my friends that had been with me. So I had committed to go with a couple of people, but we were all in different points in the event. And that was one thing that I had been told by someone, like, if you go with people, you know, don't sit with them.
I have heard that.
Yeah, because it changes your experience, because if you know people and you've been showing up as some way for these people, change scares people, first of all. And also you are going to be worried about their emotions and how you show up for them and all those sorts of things. And so it kind of hinders your experience. And so we sat, I mean, at all opposite sides of the room.
Were you with friends?
I was with the 2 people that I had met at the last event.
Oh, that's cool.
And then I had seen people that I had met in my other events there as well.
I see. Okay, so, but you all sat away from each other. And if you go with a spouse, you really should sit apart, right? They want you to, or do they want you to sit together if it's a spouse?
So I actually took my husband. That was what we did for our honeymoon. And we went to UPW, but we sat separately, totally on opposite sides of the arena.
For UPW. Mm-hmm. And if you were to go to Date with Destiny together, same thing?
Separate.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I think there's so much beauty in being able to just be there for yourself and give yourself space in whatever your process looks like. Because what you're dealing with at those events, you're going through stories and events and things that have happened that have shaped your life. And for you to be able to fully process them, if you're doing that, worried about what other people think or worrying about someone else, you're not going to give yourself the grace or the space to show up for yourself. And so, even if I took a friend, anybody, I would not sit with them. And as a service to myself and as a service to them as well. Because it's intense, and if you're not totally in it, you're not going to get it. And so it's such a safe space in there.
Yes.
And so you want to do everything to keep that safe space for everybody. And I think there's so much insight that comes from talking to people who aren't with you every day.
Yes, totally agree.
Especially as you're trying to shift and change and into who you want to be. If you're with people that, especially like sometimes it's really hard for people that are that close to you to see you change, because it brings out fear like, well, what if I can't change with them? Or who is this person? And so, but you shouldn't ever, 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 and I've learned this a really hard way, dim yourself or change yourself to fit other people or to fit in their box or to make other people comfortable. I've spent my life until a few years ago living my life to make other people comfortable. Because I've always been intense and loud and just like, I'll talk deep, and I've just always been that way, but I wasn't that way for that set of time that we spoke about earlier, really after my senior year and into college, because I felt like I didn't want to be too much for people, or people couldn't handle me, or whatever it was.
Right.
I wanted to fit in. And now I'm totally the opposite. Like, I'd rather be too much for people than fit into their box to make them comfortable. Because if I'm making other people comfortable or uncomfortable, then I'm going to force them to grow in their own way too, or make them think about something. And really, we're gifted this life, and we were put here with these gifts, whatever they may be. And so, if you're dimming that, you're not only hurting yourself, and it's not giving people permission to also step into who they are.
Right. So Date with Destiny, is that 1 week? Is it 7 days?
Yeah, I think it was Tuesday through Sunday.
Tuesday through Sunday in Florida, or where was that?
I went in Florida. Yeah, I think he does it in Australia and Florida. And it was so intense. I did not sleep like barely the whole week because I was just so fired up. And at the end of the week, you make this giant poster. So everything that you worked on, I mean, you have a whole relationship day, and you just go into everything, and you make this whole poster of your values and your mission statement and your relationship goals. I mean, you make this whole thing, and I stayed up all night doing it. And I remember I got so sick after the event, but I think it was my body's way of just like purging all the stuff that I'd let go of. But I wanted to be a part and do everything full out. And I wanted to just soak up everything I could about that experience and the people, because you're constantly talking to different people, and it's amazing to talk to different people who see different things in you. And so you're just sharing this process. And so I barely slept the entire week, and I had lost my voice, but I was still screaming. And
How was the business mastery?
It was really awesome. It was very intense. Especially as a new business owner, it was intense, and kind of felt like I had been hit by a bus half the time, but so much good information. Okay. It's something I would definitely go back to again at different points in your journey. Yep. Because the people, the experts that he brings in, the knowledge that he has, because you look at still all aspects, like, yes, it's business, but you're also still thinking about everything that plays into that. It was fantastic. It was long. The days aren't as long as the other events, but it's still, I mean, it's a lot. And it's a lot of strategy and just a lot of information, but it's brilliant.
And, it's more like 10 grand, right? Or more?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you use the business mastery? Was that for Heal Victoriously?
Yeah.
Or what did you have in mind for that?
Yeah, it's, with Heal Victoriously, obviously, I'm coaching now, but I just want to keep expanding, and I just want to help and serve as many people as I can. So I did it. I wanted to do it just because I wanted knowledge, right? Like, I just love absorbing knowledge. I'm always listening to podcasts, reading books, like anything I can get my hands on. And I feel like I'm asking my clients to invest in themselves and to grow in that. And I feel like as a coach, it's my responsibility to keep growing and to keep learning. And the better I am in my own life, the better I can serve other people. And, we're never perfect, but I just want to keep absorbing all of that knowledge. And so, yes, it was for Heal Victoriously. It was actually my husband and I were at UPW, and we were sitting on opposite sides of the arena, and they had done the business mastery like presentation. And my husband has always been really good with money. He had a savings account when he was like 3 because his parents would give him money for snacks and he would save it. And
That's
so,
cool. Good for him.
He's just always been really great with money, but he's also like, I came from a family where we traveled, and my parents love like food and cuisine and just experiencing all of that. And he grew up very well, but also just very different. And he wanted to hunt and spend his money doing that. We just grew up different. And so he had always just he just was very cautious with how he spent his money. Very good with it, had enough, but just was very cautious. And so he called me and he was like, you have to go. And I remember being like, what? Like, this is coming from you. And it's a lot of money. It's a big commitment that you look at, and then you just think. I remember when I went to Date with Destiny and I was making, I think it was $23,000 a year. Within that next year, I was making as a salary more than triple and had like paid off everything. And so I think when you invest in yourself and in that, it always comes back to you, whether it's monetarily or in a relationship or in an opportunity. I just think the more you value add and the more to yourself, to other people, it's always going to come back. And and because I felt like what I learned, I then applied to my life, right? I didn't just do it at the event, because I think that's the thing that's hard, is like you're at this event where you're with all these people who are thinking like you and doing these things, but then you come back in the real world where most people are not like that.
That's right.
And it's really hard, A, to hold yourself accountable, and B, when people are questioning you or uncomfortable with your change, it's easy to fall back into that. And so I think that's the beauty of coaching, is that that's what I'm here for, right? Like, that's what I help people do. Like, you can go to events, go to them, read all the books, but having accountability and having those people. And thankfully, I had people in my life. I didn't have a coach at the time, but I had people who were coaches who were my friends. And so essentially, we're coaching each other and constantly in it. So I applied everything to my life, and I stayed really diligent and just kept learning and growing. And so I was able to apply that. But we went to UPW. And so in that moment, I was like, I have to invest in myself, because if I do this, like, I have to get my message out there. I have to help people, not for myself. I don't care about that. Like, I don't even care about money, but I want to do it because I want people to experience life in the way that I'm living, right? Like, I've been through the darkness. I've sat there so many nights and in so much pain, but I also have been on the other side, and I can see like life is different when you are able to sit with the pain and you're able to just be there through it and not stay in it, but sit with it enough so you take the power away from it. And then you're able to feel and love and feel joy at such a deeper level, because you're no longer numb in this like half alive, like, oh, well, I'm not really feeling pain, but then you're not really feeling joy either.
Yes.
And so you're able to kind of really fully experience that. And so I just want to be able to help people in that, and to encourage and support people in living a life that's true to them, and to using their voice. Like, so many people just don't know how to speak up for themselves. Or to ask for what they need. And so it became so much more about like, I need to invest in myself so I can understand business and so I can grow as a person, but also because I want to serve at the highest level possible. Like, when I'm showing up for people, I'm not showing up at a partial level ever. Like, I'm going to give you everything, and I expect that in return, because that's the only way you grow. And so to show up at that high level and ask that of my clients, I have to show up in that way for myself.
Yeah. Did you experience the Tony Robbins events as like a shock to your, I guess your, what's the term for the shock pads like put on people that are having like cardiac arrest or whatever?
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, did you experience that as like a shock to like restart your your person?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it really is, because it wakes you up to a life that I didn't even think was possible, and a way of thinking and being that I didn't know was possible. And I think, we're creatures of habit, and we create habits. Our life is about habits. It's how we keep going, right? Like, our brains learn things. We usually get up on the same side of the bed, brush our teeth the same way, do the same thing every day. So we have these habits in daily life, but we also have these habits in our brain. And so every time that something happens in your life, it's stored in this file cabinet of all these different stories. So whether it's, I'm not enough, I can't be loved, everybody I love leaves me, I'm a loser, whatever it may be, you have all these events that are reinforcing that story. And so I think for the first time when I went to those events, it woke me up to realizing that I'm the one creating my stories, and I'm the one that can change them. Yeah. And if I can learn to listen for the stories then I have power because I can create whatever I want, but I have to start with me and I have to shift that. And so it just woke me up to this awareness that I didn't even know was possible. And then also this power, like every one of us has this personal power in us, but so many of us, don't know how to use it or don't know that it's there. And I think that's what I love about self-love. It's so much more than just being like, oh, I love myself, but it's like, who are you? Like, what is this power that's in you? And it can be soft power. It can be loud power. It doesn't matter what it is, but that's in everybody. And so learning how to wake that up, it changes how you experience life and it changes how you can serve other people. And I think what I love most is it's such a ripple effect. If you're kind to someone or you show up in this space that is just totally in you, then you hold space and you give other people permission to live this life like this. And so, yeah, it was absolutely a shock to my system. Every time I go to an event, even UPW, I've been multiple times, it's still a shock every time because I feel like it just kind of like, not as much as a shock as the first time, but it's just like every time you learn something else and it's easy to slide back into old habits. So it's like, it's always just kind of correcting you. And that's why I love having coaches. I have my own coaches too. Every good coach has a coach and I have multiple coaches and I love it because it holds you accountable to the things that you slip back into and the ways of thinking and just all of that.
Yes. So that was recently, 2 to 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yes.
And you mentioned earlier, maybe the website came out 2 years ago or something. More of your story came out 2 years ago or a couple of years ago, and you had friends that actually didn't even know until some of this information was coming out that you had lost a sister and some of those things.
Yeah.
Did we cover the period of time though up until that turning point a couple of years ago?
No. So I think the biggest actually turning point that happened was after Date with Destiny. So this was, I guess, like over 2 years ago now. I started actually while I was going to the Tony Robbins event having really bad anxiety. And I had never had panic attacks before in my life. And I started getting random panic attacks and just kind of feeling that anxious feeling all the time. And it just progressively started to get worse and worse. And I ended up leaving Lululemon because I just felt my time there was done, but I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And I ended up working for a friend's company, her father's company. And I was working in the roofing industry and I was there for 6 months. And she's one of my dearest friends now and an amazing family, such a great company. But the desk life is not for me. And I was, for the first time, sitting still all day long and with my thoughts, which is a terrifying thing if you don't know what to do with them. And so over the course of the time that I was there, my anxiety was getting really, really bad to the point that I was constantly in panic attacks all day. And then to the point where it was waking me up at night. I would wake up, literally the first time it happened, I thought I was having a heart attack. And so it kept getting progressively worse. And this was right before I was supposed to move to Nashville. And so here I'm thinking like, I've done all this work, like I've got my stuff together, but I'm having all these panic attacks. So obviously like I'm missing something. And when my husband came back for me, the night that he came to the house, that was the first night I woke up in the middle of the night with panic attacks. And so it just started getting worse. I mean, I started getting more afraid of everything. I was constantly living in my head. Like it was so paralyzing. Like I was afraid to drink water. I was afraid of getting dehydrated. I was afraid to eat all these different things. I mean, like I was just like in another like state of living. And I remember I would wake up in the middle of the night. My mom was so wonderful. I was, instead of sleeping in my room, I started sleeping with her because I felt like it calmed me down a little bit. And I would get up in the middle of the night and I would start playing songs. And there's a song called Where Were You? And it's from a movie and it's by Francesca. And I don't know her last name, but it's a Christian song. And I played it one night and it's the story of the footprints in the sand. And, but it's this, she starts saying like, where are you? Like my life is falling apart. You say you're there, but like, I don't see you. And I felt that so true. And I remember one night I was listening to it and I just over and over and over was playing it and just sobbing because I just didn't understand. And I remember there were nights that my mom was like, I'm going to have to take you to somewhere to get help if you don't figure this out. Because I would wake up and I'd be like, my heart was racing. I'd be like, I'm having a heart attack. I'm unhealthy. Like I started having hypochondria. Like I just like thought everything was wrong with me. And I remember just sitting there and I was like, I'm not going to go on medication. Like I just remember one day I came home actually from work really anxious and I had stopped working out through this period because working out freaked me out because it made my heart race. So then I felt like it was going to just shift me into another panic attack.
Oh, wow.
And so working out had always been something in my life that I had done, but I was afraid of it. I was afraid of everything. And I remember coming home one day and I was angry. I was so angry that I was living like this and that I didn't know how to stop it, because everything in my life I had been able to kind of piece together and figure out what was happening, and I just felt lost. And I remember I started listening to incantations that I recorded of myself at Date with Destiny, and I went for a run and I was screaming them, because I remember Tony Robbins talked about a story where he was yelling on the beach like these incantations just running, and I did it. And I was literally like, people thought I was crazy. They were looking at me because I was running through my neighborhood screaming and just like running and crying. And I remember I got home because I was so mad that I couldn't sleep at night and that I was afraid of everything. And I got home and I was like, no more. There's a reason this is happening. I'm going to get to the bottom of it. I'm not going on medication. There's nothing wrong with medication if you need it. But I was refusing. I was like, I'm going to figure this out. And so I just started doing research into what anxiety is and panic attacks and really like the root of that. And healing myself every day. I mean, I would meditate for hours every day. I would get up early to do it, to sit with it. I was journaling, I was reading, I was listening to podcasts. I mean, I was just doing research into like the actual science in the body and how like half of your brain shuts off when you go into a panic attack. So you don't have the rational brain, and how to reactivate that, and just the gut health and how that play. I mean, like I did so much research. So I wanted to find my way out, because I was like, life does not have to be this way.
Yeah.
It does not. And what I've learned now, and I actually love anytime I feel anxious now, I love it because anxiety is just like a warning bell. It's like a fire alarm. It's just our body's way of saying, hey, something's wrong. And I think that I was so anxious because I had stuffed so much down in me and not said it, not felt it, not experienced it. You know, like I had gone through all these things in my life and done things to process it, but I hadn't fully processed it. Mm-hmm. And, as much as I thought I had, there was still so much there. And, I'd always wanted to be the strong person for other people and, putting other people first. And so I never wanted to break down or look weak. And I had really stopped crying for a lot of my life and just kind of like didn't want to do it in that. And so there would be days that I would literally just cry, but it felt so healing because I was just giving myself permission to just sit with feelings. And I learned that the best thing to do when you're having a panic attack is to move really slow. And because when you have a panic attack, your body's in fight or flight, right? Mm-hmm. So when you have a panic attack or constant anxiety, you've basically trained your brain into a constant state of worry. So it's no longer just something you do. It's like, this is a habit that your brain has. And the more you do it, the stronger it is. And so you just want to break that habit. But the thing,
panic attacks, the more you do it, the stronger it becomes?
Well, it becomes a habit because your body learns, your body stops being able to recognize signals. So in the past, like when our ancestors were there, the fight or flight response was there because they were actually in danger, right? Mm-hmm. Like they were being hunted by saber-toothed tigers. So there's a reason why they were getting anxious, so their body could get in fight or flight so they could run to save their life. But now we have that response, and we're not actually in danger most of the time because our bodies can no longer determine what's actual danger and what's not. And that's where you cross over into that state of anxiety where it's becoming constant because your body can no longer shut down the fight or flight response. So you're living in it. Mm-hmm. We think on average like 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. So if you're not in control of those thoughts, if you think of 80,000 thoughts a day and they're mostly anxious, how do you think you're going to feel?
Yeah, that's crazy when you put a number on it. I've never heard a number on that.
Yeah, it's like
60 to 80,000
thoughts
a day.
50 to 60 to 80,000, somewhere in that range, I think, depending on how long you're up and all the things. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so if you're not controlling what you're thinking, that's a really scary thought to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
And then when you start to have panic attacks are scary. So then if you're afraid of the panic attacks, then you're bringing more fear into the body, and then you're just strengthening that response that your body needs to be in fight or flight mode. So then you're in fight or flight mode, afraid of the fight or flight mode, and then it's just this constant state. So the best thing to do is to slow down because you have to train your brain to know it's not in danger. So I would ask myself, is there a lion? Am I in danger? Which sounds so simple and so stupid, but it allowed me to be like, I feel like I am, but I'm not. And then moving really slowly and speaking really slowly. So your body can start to realize that you don't need to be like this all the time because nothing's going on. It can start to slow down. Yeah. And it can be in that space. And then in that space, then you can start to realize, well, what's happening? Am I anxious because of something I'm thinking? Am I anxious because something's, my gut is unhealthy or whatever in your body? Am I anxious because I'm not just feeling the emotions, right? Like, I think there's been such a interesting take on the fact of like feeling emotions. Like, you know, you're taught women are too emotional. Men are not supposed to cry. Like, you're not supposed to feel your feelings. When kids grow up, it's like, okay, you can't have that meltdown right now. We're in the middle of a store. It's like all these things that we learn, like that feeling your emotions is not a safe space for that.
Yes.
Whether it's anger, fear, sadness, whatever it may be. And so I feel like for the first time, anxiety gave myself permission to feel those emotions and to understand that, emotions are being human. You are human when you have emotions.
Yes.
And they don't have so much power when you allow yourself to be with them, and then they can shift. But if you don't, then they pile on. And that's where I believe my anxiety came from. And I think it's different for everybody. And there's so many different things that go into, you know, the chemical makeup of you and how your health is. And but I think also it does serve as a beautiful reminder. Like if I'm feeling anxious, it allows me to stop and be like, okay, what's going on? And most of the time I just need to cry because of something that's happened, or journal or meditate and just sit with that and kind of work through it. Instead of just like pushing it under the rug and doing that, which I had done for so long. And so I felt that really that phase of that anxiety is honestly what shifted me and propelled me forward into my thoughts and into how I care for my body, and at this whole other level, and realizing that I have control of my thoughts, which is a beautiful thing. And it's also terrifying, because if you don't take control of your thoughts and you let media, social media, other people tell you what you're going to think, that's a scary life that you're living.
Yeah, it's a very scary life. So the anxiety was a catalyst into sort of like, I've had enough. We're going to do things different going forward.
Yep.
What brought on the anxiety at that particular period of time?
I think I had opened the floodgates a little bit going to those events. And so I would go to those events and really pull up a lot of stuff. And then I'd go back to my daily life and not deal with it. And I would come back to be around people who are not moving forward in life, who didn't care about self-development. And so I was a different person. So I'd go to these events and step into me. And then I would come back and be this other person.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And that caused that anxiety, which was a catalyst then to really a more kind of whole change, really, like a more holistic change, like
100%.
the whole person change.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. I think you had on your website that you were on Adderall at some point. Was that pre-anxiety?
That was in college. That was pre.
Oh, that was way back in college.
But I think that probably contributed to it. So like in college, you know, you're a college student. I was prescribed it, but I loved it because it numbed me. You know, I would just not think about anything. I would just do homework. I would go. I'd be super efficient, and I didn't have to feel anything around me. And so I think I kind of became addicted to that feeling, and I was never addicted to it. I didn't even take it every day, but like I would look forward to when I'd be like, okay, I have to study a lot and like take it, because it just like, it was another way that I didn't have to be present in my life. It was another way for me to escape. So whether it was the eating disorder or the anxiety or the Vyvanse or whatever it may be, it was just another way for me to just escape everything that was going on instead of just looking at it head on. But I didn't have the tools then. And I think that's a big reason why I became a coach, is because I didn't feel like I had the tools to deal with all of this. And so I wanted to be that source for people. And not everything I do is this dark and heavy. You know, sometimes we're just like working on goals, because I love encouraging people to dream. But in those states where you're numb, you're not dreaming because you're just trying to survive. I had been in survival mode my whole life. And I feel like when I had anxiety, it woke me up to this other, like, because I remember thinking like, if I can just peel this back, if I can figure out what is going on, what's causing this and what's underneath this, like I can unleash this whole being inside of me that's just been dying to come out. Like I felt like anxiety was just like my real self was just trying to like peel back the stupid layers that I had put on myself my whole life, and all the masks that I had worn and everything that people had told me I had to be. I felt like anxiety was me just like pulling through the stories and the crap and all that just to like come out into myself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Back to Adderall, which I want to touch a little bit more on anxiety, but back to Adderall. I don't know that much about it. What was it prescribed to you for? What is it generally prescribed for? And is that kind of, I believe that people take Adderall when it's not necessarily prescribed because it helps them with focus or performance. So, but I don't know a ton about it. So.
Yeah, I honestly don't know too much about it either. Like everybody in college, I think, well, not everybody, but a lot of people in college are either prescribed it or they take it. I was having a lot of trouble focusing, and I remember like getting really distracted in the car, and I just felt distracted in class. And now looking back, I think I just had a distracted mind because I had a lot going on that I wasn't processing underneath the surface, and I wasn't eating in a way that was supporting my body, but I was just distracted. I felt like I couldn't focus in class. I would have to like reread things over and over sometimes. And so I just like, everybody was taking it. So they're like, well, why don't you go see? So I went to a doctor, took a test, and they prescribed it to me. And I don't believe in it now. I would never recommend it. From what I know that it did to my body. And I think what it does, like there's no long-term positive studies on it. So, and I mean, like, I don't even take Adderall now. I mean, Advil now. Like, I do not take, everything is natural if I can help it. But I think it's prescribed for, ADD or ADHD. I definitely, I think I had a busy mind. I'm not sure that I had either of those things. I think I just had a lot going on that I wasn't dealing with or processing. And I mean, everybody has a lot going on. We all think the same, crazy amount of thoughts each day. And so I just don't think I was doing anything to serve me, to slow me down enough where I needed it. And so so that's why.
Makes sense. I have not dealt with anxiety in my life. And I guess now that I have dealt with some anxiety, I realize that was maybe a bit of a source of pride for me. Like but before I ever dealt with anxiety, it's not like I ever was like, oh man, you never deal with anxiety. That's really good. I just never really dealt with it and just, I guess, took it for granted. But wound up in the hospital September of 2019 because I thought I was having a heart attack. And that triggered something. I feel like it created a pathway or broke something that then either caused me to or allowed me to deal with anxiety since then. And so from September of 2019 until a couple of months ago, I dealt with anxiety in a way that I just never have experienced before. And it's not fun and it is debilitating sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, there was one point, this was just a couple of months ago, because I had to do some work and go to a certain place and respond to some people that kind of triggered things from the past. Yep. And it was a Monday and I was sitting where Andrew's sitting. And I literally almost wound up under that coffee table over there, like in a ball. Like it was like I was having to like concentrate on breathing and just like breathe in, breathe out. Like it was like just what it took to like stay alive and stay here and get through the day. Like that took everything.
Yes.
And so about 4 p.m. or so, I finally texted a good friend and asked him to pray for me. And that just sort of broke like within the next hour. And what's weird about that is I'm always honored anytime someone texts me and wants me to pray for them. But I always feel like I'm being a nuisance, when I ask someone to pray for me. Mm-hmm. And that was just a good, like, dude, you're an idiot kind of moment because it worked. That friend was honored that I asked him, followed up later. And it was like, he even offered to call me. And I was like, and this was a little bit embarrassing, but I just texted him like, I'm not really in position to talk right now. Like we can maybe talk tomorrow, But he didn't feel bothered. But I think just back to that kind of that creating that habit or those pathways or something in your brain that kind of resonated because I feel like I've experienced that in the last year.
Yeah. We all worry. Life is, things happen and worry comes up and it's part of being human. But the difference between someone who doesn't have anxiety and then people who start to develop anxiety and then a panic disorder where they start to have panic attacks often, it's at least I read a lot of studies that it becomes a habit in the brain. So you do something once and then the more you do it, it basically like makes that string bigger and thicker. Mm-hmm. And that's basically like the most simple way to explain it. And so if you do something once that solves a problem, then your brain knows it can go back to it. And so, worry, if you worry like we do as humans, but then if you continue to worry and then you start to worry not only about the one thing that was happening, but then everything, then it just starts to build and it becomes this habit. And then you just keep strengthening that and strengthening that and strengthening that. And then that becomes your first reaction to something. So instead of where maybe you used to go, okay, well, do I need to worry and how am I going to solve this? Now it's become this thing where it's just like this big worry. And now you're no longer thinking rationally through it. You're just worrying. Then you're worrying about everything. Then you start to stack on the worry and it just becomes this habit and then it becomes a strength. And then you start to have panic attacks and then it just kind of builds from there. But what I love that you said is that you said, when you said that you wound up in the hospital and you said it either caused or allowed me to. And I think that what you said is so beautiful because that is the difference. Because if you can say, okay, this allowed me to open this up to have this experience. So I'm going to come out of this stronger versus like, well, this caused this and now I'm dealing with this and now my life is terrible. You know what I mean? Like you didn't say that, but I think that's where the big thing is. But when you're having anxiety all the time, you can't always see the good and the bad and what's going to strengthen. If you're constantly thinking, well, this is happening to me and my life is miserable and now I'm dealing with this and I'm never going to get out of this. This is impossible. You're going to believe that. And then that's where you're going to stay stuck. But if you can believe this is happening for me and I just have to figure out why it's happening. And if I can figure out why it's happening, then I'm going to figure out how to solve it. And I believe with everything inside me that I'm going to be able to get over this anxiety, this depression, this anger, this whatever it may be. If you can see a way out, then you can start to figure out and dig your way through what's happening.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and things happening for a reason. I mean, for whatever weird reason, I had just woke up at 1:30 a.m. that morning. It was like not tired at all, so I just went to work, and I was very productive from like 2 a.m. to like 8 a.m. And then just like the things just kept getting worse throughout the day. And I got home and made the mistake of Googling like how to tell if you're having a heart attack.
Oh, yep.
It was every single one except for stabbing pain down the left arm, but like diarrhea, chills. I was in bed shaking, nauseous, dizzy. I mean, everything. Like it was like at 9 p.m. and finally Mary Ann was like, you probably should go to the hospital.
Yep.
But we have 5 kids, so does she go with me?
Right.
And we call a neighbor and like, we think Kent's having a heart attack. Can you come watch our kids? Or do you take the chance and drive yourself,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a very surreal experience because I actually didn't think I was going to come home again. I actually thought I was having a heart attack. And just like saying goodbye to Mary Ann, it was more like, I guess it was more normal than I thought it would be. And even like waiting in the waiting room, I didn't, I just thought like death is very close, and it was just sort of like, I don't know, just sort of like a common feeling like, yeah, you might die and this happens. Like people die. This is the cycle of life. And just with what we were dealing with at the time related to business, the truth is I kind of wanted to die. Not kind of, I did want to die.
Yeah.
But then as it turns out, it was not that. And it was just a panic attack. But what sort of, I guess, gave me some perspective, I think, was because this got a little bit late. So at about 1:30 a.m., so I guess at this point I'm up for like 24 hours. So I'm in the hospital that night. It's past midnight. It's like 1:30 a.m. And by the way, emergency rooms are terrifying places. I mean, it is. You don't want to spend time in there.
No.
That's like the only time I think I've ever been in the ER. But it's scary. And there was like either the room next to mine or the one beyond that, there was like a code something or other, and someone was dying, and they like called for the paddles, and I could hear them paddling this person, and they died. This is like 1:30 a.m. And I overheard the doctor say something about a cocaine overdose, and the person that was with whoever died, it was a lady, was just wailing uncontrollably. It sounded like it was awful. It sounded like an animal in a cage, like just like she was also high or whatever on whatever drugs they were doing. And she was like out of her mind. Wow. And so that was like, all right, 3 hours ago, I thought I was going to die. I wanted to die. I was totally fine with it. And, it was sort of like the one thing that I kind of noticed that stood out to me in that, I guess the experience in some way was like, there was kind of a gift there because what stood out to me when I was in the waiting room thinking I was legitimately going to die, which sounds kind of silly now because it's just a panic attack. But the feelings are the same
so
nonetheless.
real.
When you're in the
so
moment,
real.
it was very, very real.
Yep.
And what really stood out to me was that life is like you're going to be remembered not for your accomplishments, but you're going to be remembered for like the little things, like the small moments, like the everyday thing. Like that's how your kids are going to remember you.
Yes.
That's how your wife's going to remember you. It's not so much like what you accomplished or didn't, but it was like, yeah, Dad, he liked to give us a lot of hugs, little things like that.
Yep.
We like to sit outside on a Saturday, just very normal kind of everyday things. Like the little things, I think, is what kind of is the sum of your life. You know what I mean? It's not like the big accomplishments or the big things. It's like the little things. That's the sum. And you're going to be remembered for kind of more what you loved, I think, not what you did so much.
Yep.
So that was sort of like, I guess that like having that insight was kind of a gift because then if you are super successful or you're not successful at all, well, either one can be okay in a sense as long as like you live with integrity and you live with love and you're open to those around you and you took care of yourself and your family and those types of things. Like that's what makes a man, that's what makes a life.
Yeah.
And then just experiencing like that person dying in the room next to mine, that was a good wake up call too, because, and this was several hours later, but it's like, man, you don't actually want to die. Mm-mm. You want to go home with your family. Like that person died and that sucks. And that whoever was with that person is in an awful lot of pain right now. And, if you die, your family's going to experience that. So you are given now the gift of life. Thank goodness this was a false alarm and you get to go home again. And I was just ready to go home. Like I was ready to go home and sleep. And so, yeah, but that, there's some lessons in some of those difficult times like that.
There's always lessons. And I think like that's something that I love to normalize is those darker experiences, right? That don't feel good. And you don't understand them at the time, but there's always beauty in them and you can choose to see it or you choose to miss it. Mm-hmm. And that's going to totally change the course of where you go with it and sometimes how long you stay in it. Right. And I think that it just isn't, people don't talk about stuff like this enough and give space to people and just have this be part of life. Like where you ask like, how are you? But most people aren't really like, how are you know what I mean? Right. And so like, I love asking like, how are you feeling today? Like what's really going on? Because I want space for people to do that because I know the power in having space to just speak your thoughts and to start to understand, like I'm feeling anxiety, but maybe it's not because I'm anxious. Maybe it's just because something happened yesterday where I upset someone and they've been angry at me. And now I'm really sad that I said that and I hurt their feelings. You know what I mean? Like it's like, but sometimes you miss all those things and then if you don't learn, I feel like you can miss out on so much life if you don't take advantage of the darker points because that's where you're made, right? It's like all those cheesy things that are like when diamonds are made and everything's made like under pressure or like during all the hard times, it's like that's where things happen. And so those really can be catalysts, even though they're terrible. And for a lot of people, just unimaginable, but you can use it for good and you can use it to serve other people. But you have to serve yourself with it first. Mm-hmm. And the only way you can do that is by getting down with it, like getting dirty with it and just like sitting with it and speaking about it and then learning to piece your way out. But in those moments of anxiety or in those times where if something happens, someone died or you have anxiety or you're going through depression, it feels like you want to die because it doesn't feel like there's a way out. And I remember feeling that a lot of times I didn't know how to find my way out. And that was so terrifying. And I felt trapped in my own head. Which is equally terrifying. I remember during the time that I had anxiety, I had an ear infection, the first one I'd ever had in my life. But when you have an ear infection, you can't hear. So it really puts you in your head. And I think that's honestly what really tumbled it over to making it so much bigger. But I just remember feeling so stuck and not knowing how to get out. And not knowing what to do. And so it's easy in those moments when things happen in life that aren't the pretty things to feel like I'm never going to make my way out. I'm never going to be able to get out of this. I'm never going to be able to get past this. I'll never love again. I'll never own the business again. I'll never make that money back. It's so easy to go into that mindset. And so it's having the tools and also allowing yourself to be in it in a way that's going to allow you to push forward. But it's so hard to do that without the resources, without the support system. And when you're in that, you're not thinking like, oh, how is this going to serve me? You're like, this sucks. And I don't know. And if I hadn't gotten so angry that one day, I'm not sure how long it would have taken me to get out. But I think that served me because I was like, I'm going to find why this is happening. And then I'm going to use this to serve other people. And I think I just had to tell myself that every day. And that's when I started to train my thoughts to change that. But it's a terrifying place to be.
Yeah.
It really is.
On anxiety, I feel like this is a common. I mean, I'm having more conversations this year with people about anxiety than I ever had before, and
yes.
I think it's because it is more common. I think just objectively, I think that's what it is. I'm also aware of the fact that's like, when you buy a red car, it's like, oh, you all of a sudden notice all the red cars, So it's possible I'm dealing with anxiety this year. I really haven't in the past, and now I'm starting to notice it more. But I also think with everything that's going on with, the virus and politics and everything.
Yes.
I feel like there is more anxiety out there.
Absolutely.
So what would be some of your practical tips on dealing with anxiety?
Yeah. Meditation. And whenever people used to tell me that when I had anxiety, I wanted to punch them in the face because I was like, I don't want to sit with my thoughts. But really, truly, sitting with your thoughts, if you have all these thoughts going through your head all day, but you're going through the motions, you're only conscious of 1% of your thoughts.
Dang.
So if
1% of your thoughts you're conscious of?
Yes, correct.
That's insane.
So if you are, and that was a stat that has been published. So if there's more research that's been published since then, that could be different, but you're not conscious of a lot. So meditation is like the gym for your mind. So you go to the gym every day to strengthen your muscles, but you have to do that with your mind as well. And so allowing meditation, it's the only time that you're still enough to start to listen to what is going on in your head. So you can start to pay attention to what's happening. So then you can take control to change what you're thinking. And meditation can look different to everybody. There's moving meditation. There's literally sitting in silence. There's guided meditation. There are so many ways to meditate, but giving your mind time to slow down and to just be present with yourself and your thoughts. So you can start to slow the space in between your thoughts so you can be more mindful of what's happening in your head and in your life. And so meditation, actually when the pandemic started happening, I actually started offering free meditations. I was doing them Wednesday 2 times a day just because I felt like people needed it. And meditation is really hard to do if you don't know how to do it. And it's not always fun, especially if you're a go person and taking the time to do it. And so,
how are you offering it on Zoom or something?
Yeah, I was just doing Zoom.
Okay.
So I do one-on-one with people. I always use it in my coaching, but I also offer like one-on-one sessions for just meditating. But I just felt like I wanted to just help more people and just give the gift of that, because that is truly one of the best things you can do for anxiety, for anything you're going through in this crazy world that we're living in. It is the best thing that you can do. And so I would say find a way to meditate, whether that's through, there's so many apps out there, and sometimes the apps can be overwhelming because there's a lot of them out there. But finding an app or a person or, like just finding a coach or going to meditation classes or sitting there with music or doing something. But even if it's 5 minutes a day, even if you start with 2 minutes a day and then build your way up, it doesn't have to be this hour-long practice of sitting there. The meditations I was doing with people are 20 minutes. But really just giving yourself time to slow down. And I think just be aware of what's going through your head. And then I think a really profound thing is journaling. And a lot of times I love to meditate and then journal. And so you're coming out of that meditation and you have all these thoughts and stuff, and then you journal, but also journaling before bed, I think is really, really great. Brain dumping. So you just take pen to paper, you don't think about what you're writing, and you just write it out. And then I think also focusing on gratitude and training your brain to look for that. I think gratitude is such an underused practice. And I think like we throw it down like, oh, what are you grateful for? And it's all these different things, but it really is true, because if you can start thinking every day what you're grateful for, then you're going to train your brain to look for that. So even when a situation happens, you're going to train yourself to start to look for what you can be grateful for, what's good in the situation versus the bad. So exactly like you said, like this either caused it or allowed, that's the same thing. So once you train your brain to start looking for the good, it's going to be easier. And so whether that's getting up in the morning and writing what you're grateful for, or finding someone to text with, or anything like that, I think having a practice of gratitude, it's more than just saying what you're grateful for. It's literally being like, I think the best and easiest way to meditate is to put on your favorite music, something that's calming or whatever, whatever is calming to you. It could be rock music or, piano, but, and then thinking of moments that you're grateful for in your life. Maybe it's 3 moments, and Tony Robbins actually does this, but a moment you're proud of, a moment that, you achieved something or whatever you want to do. And then like a moment with family or friends that you loved. And then, maybe just another moment that was exciting. And so sitting and not just thinking, right? Because you can sit and be like, oh yeah, well, I'm really angry right now, but I'm grateful, I guess, that the sun is shining. And then it's different to say, like, to think in your head, like, oh, I remember that time at Christmas with my family and the presents were all around the tree and I felt the love of my family and the magic of Christmas. And then you start to feel it in your body. And then you're not only just thinking it, you're embodying this feeling. So then you're switching the chemicals that are pumping through your body. You're totally shifting your state of being. So you're shifting how you then approach the world. And so I think if you're new to meditation or you don't know what to do, either find someone to guide you or start with that. And if you can do that daily, and it doesn't take long, it can take 1 to 5 minutes, and just really practicing, not just thinking, but feeling, because that's where it's different. Because if you're just thinking, then you're still anxious. Because then you're still just stuck in your head. But being able to put feeling into it, that's where it shifts you, and that's where your brain starts to be able to make that change.
Do you do any sort of breathing exercises in addition to the meditation then, or do you recommend that as well for anxiety?
Absolutely. Breathing is so important. I think even if you don't have anxiety, learning how to use your breath is key. It is total key to life. So when I had anxiety, I really struggled to breathe out. And when you start to feel anxious, you start to suck air in because you're no longer breathing out. And I think that's why those feelings start to come up. And at least I found that true for me. I found that true for a lot of people, and I've read it. But you just don't exhale. You inhale. And so, but sometimes exhaling can be really hard if you feel like you have a lot of tension in your body and you're worked up. And I know when I was having panic attacks, I would be like, am I breathing? Am I holding my breath? I can't breathe. And so I think breathing in through the nose and then having a longer exhale than you inhale, and breathing out like you're breathing through a straw. So you go,
oh, okay.
It allows you to take a longer exhale instead of just trying to be like, because your breath is unsteady. So really taking that long exhale and breathing out through a straw just allows you to have a longer exhale. The other breathing that I love is alternate nostril breathing. And if you look it up on YouTube or the internet, you can find it. But you're basically breathing in through one nostril while the other one's covered, breathing out through the other, and then breathing back in and then back out.
Interesting. I don't think I've heard much about that.
Yeah. So you take one finger, you'll go in for 4, and then exhale out for 6. But then you'll breathe back in through this nostril before you breathe out the other. So you'll go in, out, in, out.
What is the science behind that?
It's supposed to rebalance your brain, like wake up both sides again. I think throughout the day you breathe through one nostril, and so I think it just starts to switch that back. It opens up both sides, but I think it actually balances and puts oxygen back into both sides.
That's interesting.
There's a ton of science behind it. It just worked for me, and I know it works for other people. So I haven't done like all the research, but it's used in yoga. It's used in a lot of breathing practices, but it's it's really, really helpful, and it allows you to take longer, deeper breaths.
I see. Interesting. Have you looked into the Wim Hof stuff at all?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you do any of that?
I haven't yet. I haven't gotten there, but I actually just did a little more research into it, and it's probably something I'll try. I'm always up for trying literally anything new, but I felt I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I keep hearing about it. I mean, I've heard about it. I mean, Tim Ferriss has been talking about it for years, I feel like. And wasn't the connection Candace Bruder? Did you find out about me through Pure Sweat?
Yeah.
And then I found out about you through that as well. And Candace, the founder and owner of Pure Sweat Sauna here in Nashville, went to a Wim Hof clinic of some kind just like a couple of Saturdays ago.
Yes,
so there's some things in town.
Yeah.
I just haven't looked into it yet. I feel like my understanding is the Wim Hof breathing stuff is like a little bit more, it's like the major leagues kind of.
Yes,
like it's
yeah,
like
it's intense.
it's intense.
Yes,
He's doing it, he's taking it seriously. So I would like to look into it a little bit more as well.
Yeah.
For the person that is stuck, numb, knows that this is no life to live, knows they want to get out of it, but also just feels like enough that this feels like knowing as well. Just kind of know that they can't, like feel like they can't. They're stuck. They can't go anywhere. It's always going to be this way. What are your thoughts on helping them get unstuck?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I feel like depending on where they're at, different levels, I would say start meditating and journaling. I think on your own, those things alone can help so much. Even if you don't know and you don't know the purpose, just starting to do that and starting a practice that's going to move you forward can help. And I would, you can read all the books, and like if people are in a dark spot, like find a book, find anything to start with. If it doesn't resonate, stop and find something else. I think one of the best things that you can do is, even if you don't feel like you can get out, find something that's going to give you that. Maybe it's a song you listen to every day. Like music is so important. There's actually a show that I just watched called Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. And it's one of the most profound shows because they add music through it. And I think music is so important. So maybe you don't feel like you can get up in the morning or do something you don't know how to break through. Like find that one song that maybe you listened to when you're 10 years old and it just puts you in that like zone. Because even if it doesn't feel like it's helping, it's helping. And I think like, even if you're meditating, it doesn't feel like you're helping or it doesn't feel good, that's fine. Short term, where it's not going to feel good at first because it's different than what you've been doing. But if you can just do something and keep trying things and keep trying until you're going to find your way out, you will find your way out. You just have to find what helps. And so I obviously would always recommend getting a coach of any sort. Find someone that resonates with you, that has a story, and find that, because having help is so helpful, especially someone that's outside of maybe your inner circle. But I think even beyond that, like you can do it. You can do it yourself. You just have to build up the strength to know that you can do it. And sometimes people can't do it by themselves, and that's where you get, you reach out. But I think finding something that you can do every day, whether it's the song or a small meditation, or maybe it's coloring, something that you loved from part of your life that in that moment you felt most true to you, you felt happy, you felt joy, and do it every day. And even if it doesn't feel good and it's not fun, do it. Keep doing it, because one day it will feel good again. And I think, you just have to do things that move you forward. And if you're trying something and it doesn't work, don't give up. Just try something else and keep pushing through, because I think that's where maybe I've gotten stuck in the past, and I see a lot of clients get stuck, is that they'll try a bunch of things that don't work, but you have to stick with something long enough. It's just like people who go on a diet for a couple of weeks, like that's not going to work. You're going to gain the weight back. So it has to be a lifestyle. So and getting true with like, is this actually not working, or am I the one that's not doing it full out, so it's not working because of that? And so I think you just have to do something each day that's just going to encourage you. And I find that music is huge for me. And so if you can't meditate, sit and listen to your favorite song, jam it out. If you're feeling, one thing that I love to do is you have to move your body. So Tony talks about this, and there's actually 3 things. So it's your physiology, it's going to be your focus, and then it's the language that you use. And so moving your body, right? When you are anxious or angry, you hold your body in a certain way. Like when I was anxious, my shoulders were rolled forward. I was constantly fidgeting. I think about like if someone's angry, like they're going to hold themselves different. But So you got to use your body in a way that's going to serve you. And so dance, want to put on a song, even if it's a song that isn't the happiest song, but you can yell and you can dance and you move your body, move that energy out of you. So then you can start to look at what am I focusing on, right? Because if you're anxious, it's because you're focusing on something that's not going right, or that you don't like, or that you don't know what to do with, or that you're worried about. So if you can shift your focus to something that's more empowering for you, and maybe it's not sunshine and rainbows, but it's the thing of like, I'm going to find my way out. Like that was me. Like I was not thinking that I was going to have the life I do now, but I was like, I'm going to find, this is not the end for me.
Yep.
And so I just had to switch my focus to that. And then I had to start listening to the language that I was using around things. And so I think moving your body, if you can move your body, get that energy out, get it unstuck. Like, I don't care if you're a good dancer or not, like jam out and move your body, do jumping jacks, jump up and down, like something that's going to move your body. If you're anxious all the time, maybe just stand. Like one of my favorite things to do is just standing and opening your heart, like opening your arms to the sky and just opening your heart. Cause it's a position of surrender. It's a position of just openness. And so if you can use your body in a way that's going to serve you, that's going to help so much, because everything we do is just meeting a need. Like we all have these 6 human needs, and everything we do is meeting them. It's part of who we are as humans. And so if you can figure out, am I meeting this need in a positive or a negative way? And then if it's a negative way, how can I make it positive? And then you start to look at where's your physiology, where's your focus, where's your language, and then you can start to move. And that's something that Tony talks about all the time. I got one of my certifications through his program with Chloe Madonis. And so that's something that I fully believe in, and I've seen work in my life, because you can make yourself anxious by the way you sit, and you can also make yourself joyful.
Yeah. The state of your body affects your brain. This is something where Dr. Reisman was on recently, his practice is in Brentwood, and he's been in holistic health since 1991. So he knows his stuff, 30 years. And I asked him, I think it was twice throughout the course of that conversation, I kind of alluded to like, is this now psychological or physiological? And like he was like kind of confused at the question the first time, because to him we are one. We are one being. We're one human. It's not like, oh, that's just a mental thing. That's not going to affect your body, or no, how your body is doesn't affect your mind. No, it's all one. Everything. So how you handle yourself, how you carry yourself does affect your mind, and then it also affects how other people perceive you, which affects how your interactions go with those people, which affects how you feel, which carries over into how you conduct yourself in future engagements with future people. I mean, it really does. It really does all tie together for sure. There was something there I was going to ask you about the physiological. You were saying something that I wanted to touch on a little bit more. Coaching. No, I can't think of it. Well, I'll come back to it. It wasn't the breathing. Well, I want to ask you what you are offering people. I mean, we looked at your website very briefly, and I was reading through it, of course, but for the listeners, if they're interested in reaching out, or I'm just curious what you're doing now. And is this a full-time gig?
Yes. Yeah. So this is full-time. Full-time. This is my baby, my business, and my passion. So I offer, like I said, like one-on-one meditation. And that's really just something that I just do just because I think a lot of people are afraid to try it. So that's not mainly what I do. But I love looking at coaching because it's really forward focused. So we're looking at where you are now, where you want to be, and why you're not there. And so sometimes that looks like a little bit of like seeing what the stories that you've created in the past, but we're not focusing on the past. And I'm never gonna, we're not going back to relive any of those things. Like it is really forward focused, which is what I love. So I offer one-on-one coaching, and I offer a few different things depending on what people want, but I always offer a clarity session. So if you like need a coach, or you're not even sure, or you don't even know what's happening in your life, or you just need anything, like I always offer a free session. And I'm never going to take someone on that I'm not going to serve best, but I will find you someone who will serve you best. So the clarity session kind of sees like, are we best fit to serve each other and to work together? Because coaching is a relationship. It's not like I'm up here, you're down here, and I'm going to diagnose you and tell you what what's wrong. We're side by side, and I'm here as a mirror, as a coach, as a friend, as an accountability partner, as everything to stand by you. And I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just asking you questions and really guiding you as you find your own path, because it's all about empowerment. Like, I want people to feel their own personal power and step into that and feeling true to them. So I always offer a clarity session. It's about an hour long, and it's a dive into stuff that's a lot of conversation, a lot of questions. And then I offer 3, 6, and 12-month coaching packages.
Okay.
And that it's usually 60 to 90 minutes of calls, 3 weeks, and then we have 1 week for integration. And so that's looking like taking what we've learned and applying it. And there's always work in between sessions. And that's because I can't talk to people 24/7. I would love to. But there's got to be something that they're doing in the process to empower them and to move them forward. So there's always work in between sessions, but it's not a lot. It's usually just small practices or something that's going to move them forward. And then we just coach, we talk back and forth. Sometimes there's always usually meditation or breath work or visualization, in it. And then it's just coaching after that, which is really just basically conversation. And, I do a lot of like dreaming and that stuff with my clients as well. I use a lot of different tools and techniques. I hold 3 different certifications, and I'm in the process of getting another one just so I can serve people best. So it's just, there's nothing to be afraid about. But yeah, so I do offer 3, 6, and 12-month packages and that clarity session. And that can look like relationship coaching. Like if you want to create the relationship of your dreams, or if you want to learn to love yourself, or if you are dealing with stuff that has shut you down in the past or anxiety, like we can work on that. And, so there's really, I have a big, wide reach of people. And if I feel that I can't serve you, then I will send you to someone who definitely can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And based on your website anyway, it looked like your demographic is more women.
It was, and that's something that I need to update my website. So
Okay.
I fell in love with that just because I had been working primarily with women, but yeah, no, it's everybody, but
Okay.
primarily has been women in the past.
Yeah, that makes sense. And have you helped people like do an intervention on one of their loved ones? You know what I mean? Coming back to like being stuck and not knowing how to get out and thinking your life's over and thinking it's always going to be this way. It can be hard sometimes. Well, it can be hard sometimes to initiate like change within yourself. And sometimes it's effective for another loved one to like do a bit of an intervention on you. And have you helped people, or would you help someone like do an intervention with a family member that they know is just either spiraling out of control or is just stuck, and they need like an outside, I guess, force or catalyst to help them like make a change?
Yeah, so I think there's like a couple answers for that. I think I never want to force someone to do it, and you're not going to make a change until you want to see it. And I think that's the hard part and the beautiful thing about it. I have helped people who have come to me because of other people, but then have found that they needed to do work, which then opened up their spouse to see that they were doing it, which encouraged them to then come and then helped from there. I don't necessarily do like interventions because I believe it's this long process and there's a lot that comes out, but I have had conversations with people who have been like, I don't know if you'd be open to it or she would be open to coaching, but I would love to have a conversation. That's where I do a clarity session.
Yeah, I see.
So yeah, but most of the time it's been people come to me for other people because they think they need to help someone else, and then they end up helping themselves, and that gives people permission to open
for
it
sure.
up.
You mentioned music earlier, and I mean, I've used this tactic for years and years. I mean, way back when, but music for me is, well, first of all, music is just beautiful. I think C.S. Lewis says something along the lines that music is so beautiful and meaningful because it's basically like the closest. It gives us some view into like infinity, into like eternity. I mean, it is, music is like, there's nothing else like it. You know what I mean? There's no other really art form. I mean, there's other art forms that are great and everything, but there's just nothing like music. And it really is a gift from God. Yep. Thank God for music. But one of the effective ways for me that music can be used is in a transition. So like if I have a stressful day at work and now I'm going home, I don't want to just carry all that with me. Yep. And probably different people have different ways of making a successful transition there. But for me, there's like basically nothing is good as music, like some, good Linkin Park or Whiskey in the Jar or, Won't Back Down by Tom Petty, like some good song on the way home, a song or two. Like there is something about that tends to like unlock my mind and get ready for, all right, now it's the evening and we don't need to carry the stress from the day into this evening. And it helps with that transition.
Yes.
So,
yep. I love that.
How about you had mentioned earlier about pleasing others and doing what you think other people want you to do, or who you want, who you think they want you to be. Have you grown in that area as well? And what's been helpful there? Because it's like being in a prison, if you care too much about what other people think.
Yeah, I think that is always a learning experience. I think just because of the society we live in, I think that's something that I always have to be aware of it. And it's something that I've definitely grown in, but you still catch yourself in it. And, or at least I do, I catch myself in it. And so I have to kind of take myself back. And that is definitely an area that I grew in. I think, one of the biggest things was learning how to use my voice in small ways first. I used to be really indecisive and just very like, whatever you want. And so I think in small ways, like making decisions that align with me. And that can look like what I'm going to wear, or if someone wants to eat somewhere and I don't want to eat there, choosing to eat at the other place because that's what feels best for me. And I was actually, the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle, I think is just one of the most brilliant books. And I was listening to it again the other day, and she talks about being brave and how she has two daughters who, their brave looks very different, but bravery isn't about being loud all the time. It's about doing what's most aligned with you. And I think sometimes that can be really hard. And so literally just making small decisions that align with you to learn, because like you have to learn what's true to you, because we're so shaped by other people and social media and our parents and all these different things. And so it takes time to learn what is true to you and what does that look like, and what is, what's behind all the masks and the things that you've hidden behind your entire life. And so making small decisions that start to open up what that looks like to you, that was super profound for me. And it's something that I use with clients. And it sounds so silly and so simple, but most of this is simple, and it's going back to what's simple. And that's how we kind of push through everything. And so making small decisions each day that feel good to you, and recognizing when you make decisions that aren't true to you. If you go to a party because you said you would and you show up and you're not happy there, taking the time to be like, okay, I didn't honor myself, and I came here because it's what everyone else was doing, or because this is what they wanted me to do, or whatever it may be. And, and having the courage just to recognize that, and then to make a different decision next time. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's a good word about just the small incremental changes.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And yeah, my wife definitely deals with that more. She has dealt with that more. I have more tended to be like, I don't really care what other people think, which is, there's some bad sides to that as well. So, but wisdom and self-awareness are, wisdom is, you really can't replace wisdom. You know what I mean? It's a very valuable thing.
Yep.
Well, thank you for coming by today. This was really, really great. Is there anything else you wanted to get into here?
I don't think so. I feel like we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't be afraid to live a life that's true to you. I just want people to, if you don't have permission, I want to give you permission to, just be true to you, and to feel the feelings, and to not be afraid to go into the dark, to look at that, because it's going to open you up, and just to have courage to be you, and just to love yourself and do whatever you can to do that. Because if you take care of yourself, you're going to be able to love other people, and everybody has a gift, and just such a precious thing to offer the world. And I just want people you're doing yourself and other people a disservice by not stepping into your full power. And so if you're playing small or you're afraid or you are in a dark place right now, like it's going to end and you're going to find your way out. And you just have to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying and find something and listen to it every day that reminds you that you can do it. And then just create a life that you want and that you feel aligned with. Yeah,
for sure. So people can check out your website. It's healvictoriously.com.
Yes.
Okay. And you're on Instagram as well?
Yes. Heal_victoriously.
At heal_victoriously on Instagram. People can check you out there.
Yep.
Well, great. Well, welcome again to Nashville. I didn't realize you'd only been here for 2 months.
Yeah, brand new.
Yeah, well, welcome. I hope you guys love it here and can settle in and kind of find friends and make a home here. I'm sure that you will.
Yes, thank you.
So if you want to come see Andrew and I at church, we go to church on the west side of Nashville. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So great.
Cool.
All right, Victoria, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
This was a pleasure. Wonderful. This is great.